February, George's 3rd birthday, and being told that, yeah, it's going to finally be law.
So what will happen now? How much leave will women be able to have?
So now it will, Stephen, mirror that if you lose a baby after 24 weeks. So in this current stance, the law says if you lose a baby over 24 weeks, you get 2 weeks paid leave. So the same will now apply if you lose a baby under 24 weeks, so from 0 to 24.
It is unbelievable that the way that the law stood was that you could potentially have lost a baby at, let's say, 8 p.m. and you would be expected to be in the office at 9 a.m. the next morning.
Yeah, and if you think I had a 12-hour labour with George, I bathed him, I left him at the mortuary, but the law says that I should be, as a lawyer, back in work time recording the next day.
GB News, the People's Channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Moss and Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. Chaos at Heathrow after a fire at a nearby electrical substation that supplies Europe's busiest airport with power has caused it to be shut down all day, causing misery for thousands of passengers, and that may continue into tomorrow. And to make things worse, counter-terrorism police have announced that they are leading the investigation into the fire. Could Russian sabotage be the reason for the chaos? We'll bring you all the very latest on the ground throughout the show. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. Absolute bedlam at Heathrow Airport. A lot of people saying this is a huge embarrassment to the United Kingdom. And is it a mere coincidence that in a week where heightened security across Europe, Sir Keir Starmer stepping up as the de facto leader of the coalition of the willing, even saying this week, yesterday, that the RAF would police the skies above Ukraine? Is all of that the perfect storm, potentially, for a Russian sabotage attack? Vladimir Putin. How would that happen? Why would it happen? Those are the questions we'll be asking throughout the show, and we'll give you expert analysis of the situation. When will things return to normal? We'll have the political response, and we'll have travel editors from newspapers telling you what this means for you, the consumer. Can you get your money back if you've been grounded? On today's show, you'll get all of the answers to the big story of the day. Get in touch, gbnews.com/your say. Now it's time for your headlines, and here's Sophia Wenzel.
Martin, thank you. It's just gone 3 o'clock. These are your headlines. Power has been restored to Heathrow Airport on an interim basis, according to the National Grid. It's after a fire at a nearby electrical substation forced Europe's busiest airport into shutdown. More than 1,300 flights have been cancelled or diverted, affecting over 200,000 passengers and leaving planes and crews in the wrong locations. Counter-terrorism police are now leading an investigation into the blaze, though they say there's no indication of foul play. Power appears to be back on at Terminal 4, with lights in the main building and the lifts in the multi-storey car park working again. However, the airport says disruption could last for days and passengers shouldn't travel to Heathrow until further notice. Meanwhile, Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, says it's not a surprise counter-terrorism police are involved.
So when these sorts of incidents occur of this seriousness, they're often declared a major incident. This was declared a major incident last night for obvious reasons, proximity to Heathrow Airport and so forth. The fire service, the fire brigade, has a chief investigator on the scene. They've been there since early this morning. They work really closely with the Met Police Service. The Met Police Service bring in specialist expertise as and when, clearly because of the proximity of the substation to the airport. It's not a surprise the counter-terror team's been involved. The Met Police Service, the Fire Brigade, will make sure that the public know whenever there's any information to pass on to the public, but there's no reason at all to suspect foul play at the moment.
Now to some breaking news. A man who took a bomb into a Leeds hospital intending to kill as many nurses as possible has been jailed for life. Mohammed Farouk has been jailed at Sheffield Crown Court for life for a minimum term of 37 years. Farouk, who was a trainee nurse, was last year found guilty of attempting to launch an IS-inspired suicide attack using a homemade bomb on the hospital where he worked in 2023. Tommy Robinson has lost a High Court bid to challenge his segregation in prison over fears he'd be killed by another inmate. He was moved to a closed wing at Wood Hill after intelligence suggested a prisoner serving life was planning to attack him. His lawyers argued his isolation breaches human rights and is harming his mental health. But the court heard he enjoys various privileges behind bars and has no arguable claim. In other news, government borrowing jumped to $10.7 billion in February, far higher than forecast, piling pressure on Rachel Reeves ahead of her spring statement next week. The Chancellor is expected to announce more spending cuts to meet her strict borrowing rules, with economists warning her fiscal buffer has now been wiped out. Plans already include a £5 billion shake-up of the benefit system and freezing incapacity payments until 2030. Despite the cuts, defence spending will rise, funded by slashing the international aid budget. Critics say Reeves has boxed herself in and warned the economy could take another hit. Elsewhere, more than 100 of London's most dangerous offenders have been convicted under a new data-driven crackdown on violence against women and girls. The Met's V100 programme uses crime reports and other intelligence to rank suspects by risk and target them before they strike again. So far, 126 people have been charged with 574 offences, including rape and attempted murder. Senior officers say the strategy is already saving lives, but admit there's still a long way to go. It comes 2 years after a damning review found the force was failing to protect women. And President Trump has signed an executive order to dismantle the Department of Education, calling it a breathtaking failure and vowing to return power to individual states. He was surrounded by school children as he praised the US's high education spending, but blamed the department for poor student performance. Legal challenges are already underway, and a bill to formally shut it down is being introduced in the Senate. But with only a slim Republican majority, the plan faces an uphill battle. Even without full closure, the department could be gutted through deep funding and staff cuts. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Martin.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to the show. Bedlam in the air and bedlam on the ground. It's been travel chaos for thousands of people today as Britain's busiest airport, Heathrow, has been shut down until midnight at least. And a fire at a nearby electrical substation has caused a mass power outage, disrupting flights around the entire world. And counter-terrorism police are now leading the investigation into the fire with strong allegations it could have something to do with Vladimir Putin. Could it be an act of sabotage? Well, we're live across the country, bringing you all of the latest on the ground. Mark White is in West London for us, and Steve Bennett is outside Heathrow Airport. Mark White, let's start with you. Absolute bedlam. Frankly, it's turning into a national and an international embarrassment for Great Britain PLC. What's the latest situation?
Well, there are certainly some very pertinent questions to be asked about national resilience and just how resilient our biggest airport, this international air hub, has been. It doesn't appear very resilient at all in terms of, OK, this is a major substation supplying the electricity needs, or most of the electricity needs, of Heathrow, but they should have these backup plans that are robust enough to be able to keep on running as an international hub should the worst happen. That's the whole reason that you have built-in redundancies and backup plans and backup generators and other sources to get electricity from the grid in through other routes if a primary source is cut out. So real questions, I think, to be answered there, and also questions around the cause of the horrific explosion at 11:30 last night, in which local residents that had gone to bed were, of course, awoken from their sleep. Others who were not in bed rushed outside to see those flames shooting high into the air. And as yet, the next day, what are we, 14, 15 hours on from that explosion, still no word as to whether this was a catastrophic accident or it may have been something more sinister. And that's why, Martin, we've got Counter-Terror Command, those expert detectives involved that have the capacity, the ability to very quickly determine whether something was accidental in nature, whether it was just an accident, or whether actually there may have been something afoot that was much more sinister in nature, that it was a deliberate act. And they should be able to ascertain that quite quickly when they can get access to the site. But the difficulty, Martin, is that that site is still an active fire scene. Although the fire is under control, there are still hot pockets and smoke billowing from the main transponder, which has been absolutely destroyed by this fire. We've just seen a shift change from London Fire Brigade, another 3 fire appliances arriving here, including fire appliances from New Malden and North Kensington, to take over the next part of the operation to continue damping down and dealing with those remaining pockets of flames.
And Mark White, huge questions still to ask. Why might Vladimir Putin have got involved? How may have been sabotage? That investigation will be ongoing. Mark White, thank you very, very much for that update. Excellent as ever. Let's also go now to Steve Bennett, who is outside Heathrow Airport for us at GB News. Steve, absolute bedlam for tourists, for punters trying to get around, being diverted around the UK and beyond. Our own airport capacity has been unable to mop up this incident at Heathrow. Tell us, what have consumers, what have people been telling you today about this absolute bedlam?
Martin, hi. Yes, it has been incredible scenes here in Heathrow, to be honest with you. I've been here since about 7:30 this morning. I haven't seen a single plane, which is unheard of. You know, the skies are empty. We haven't had this kind of emptiness in the sky since probably 2010. If you remember back to the ash cloud from Iceland, that caused all those problems, costing the aviation business £130 million a day. That's what they were saying. And here at Heathrow today, if I'm honest with you, it's been quite calm because no one's here. Everyone's been told to stay away. There's been passengers have been informed, don't bother coming until you get any further updates from us, stay away. It will be closed to at least midnight tonight. Behind me is Terminal 4, and I'm pleased to say that we've got reports that power has been restored to Terminal 4. Now they've got lights on there, the lifts are working, the multi-storey car park, so things are beginning to get back to normal. But as you know, a really busy airport that facilitates 250,000 passengers a day on average, and none of those have been here today. And some flights were even halfway to Heathrow before they were turned around or diverted to another airport as a result of the airport being closed. So kind of unprecedented scenes that we've seen here. But what I will share with you is some of the locals around here, they've said to me it's actually quite refreshing. They haven't heard a plane all day. They've been sitting in their gardens. They've been able to enjoy the fact that there is no aviation above them. So as Mark said, the investigation is ongoing and the chaos continues here at London Heathrow.
You know, Steve, it's an absolutely crazy situation. I'm getting messages from GB News viewers who are stranded in Washington telling me I can't get through to British Airways. What's happening? Well, nobody seems to know. They can't get through to the airlines. They can't travel onwards. Absolute chaos. Gentlemen, thanks to both of you. And, of course, we'll catch up with you later in the show as this story unfolds. Thank you very much indeed. Well, let's get back to the studio now. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by the travel editor at the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday, Mark Palmer. Mark, welcome to the studio. In terms of the damage this does to Britain, it's an embarrassment. This is meant to be the busiest airport, you know, in the West, in all of mainland Europe, brought to its knees by one substation going into meltdown. Frankly, this is a bad look.
You're absolutely right, and the timing couldn't be worse in many ways. I mean, our country is in something of a crisis. We have cost of living spiralling. We're trying to get back on our feet. The government talks about growth. And something like this happens, a fireball, which is very photogenic on websites and televisions all over the world, And I noticed today on CNN and Fox News, they're almost ridiculed, they're almost laughing at us in a way as to how this could happen, why we didn't have a plan B.
And, you know, we heard there are backup generators, but the backup generators are only for essential things like the runway landing lights for emergency lighting. But Heathrow has the energy consumption. It's a small city. It has a huge demand, which begs the question, how on earth can one simple substation being banged out like this send everything into darkness?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right. And, of course, what will happen is that there will be some sort of inquiry. That inquiry will go on for 2 or 3 years, a bit like the COVID inquiry, by which point there'll be another government in power. Will be none the wiser. Another crisis will have happened. And so on we go. And it's clear that our infrastructure in this country is crumbling. The country is crumbling in many ways, and this is evidence of that very, very, very thing.
And you were saying earlier, not just in the air, but railways, roads, there just seems to be a general problem. Getting around Britain, getting to and fro from Britain, Mark Palmer, is becoming a real grind.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I mean, when you go, in many ways, the railway system in India is more efficient than it is in this country, and I'm afraid that there is evidence to suggest that we are increasingly becoming a third world country. I think also there are two factors on this. So the two sides of the of people who are being affected. Obviously, there are people who are going out on holidays. We had a call today from a distraught woman who was going through a wedding in Barbados. The wedding's tomorrow, but this kind of pre-wedding party was tonight, and she's saying, how can I get there? Flight's been cancelled, I don't know what to do. And we're saying, well, you could try Gatwick, you could some other way to get there, but she won't get there, obviously, today, and she might not get there tomorrow. And I think the other thing is, it's not just the holiday makers, but also it's business.
Yes.
And every day, something like 4,000 tonnes worth of cargo comes into Heathrow. Estimates that if this goes on for the next few days, we could lose £250 million worth of business as a result of this.
So that's a huge blow to the economy. It's a blow to the reputation of the nation. And at a time where Britain is trying to portray itself as a defender of the realm of the airspace over Ukraine, the inability to even run the biggest airport, it's almost the perfect storm of reputational damage.
Yeah, it is, absolutely. And it comes, of course, only, 2 months after Rachel Reeves announced that we were expanding Heathrow Airport as a hub. And I almost felt sorry for Ed Miliband, who had to stand up and not defend what has happened, but try to explain it this morning, when we know that he's dead against the expansion of Heathrow and has had to bite his tongue, I suppose, yet again.
It's astonishing. Well, for now, there's no expansion going on. As you can see, Heathrow is a ghost town, reminiscent of those scenes during the Norwegian volcanic eruption and, of course, when the air fell silent during lockdowns. I live under the flight paths of airports in London, and it's like that again today. Utterly eerie and silent. It's an astonishing situation. Mark Palmer, thank you very, very much for joining us, the travel editor at the Daily Mail and the Mail on Sunday. Pleasure to have your company and your expertise. Thank you. Well, we can now speak with the editor of Aviation Security, Philip Baum, who's currently stuck in Norway and looking for a flight home. First of all, Mr. Baum, I'm sorry you've had your travel plans disrupted. I hope you're having as much fun as you can. And thank you for sparing time to speak to us here at GB News. Could I ask you about the rumours, the allegations going around? Counter-terror police are currently involved in Britain. This generator area is being treated as an active crime scene. It's currently too hot to investigate, but that, of course, will come in time. But people are mentioning Vladimir Putin. Is it a coincidence that at a time where Britain is poised to lead Europe's closest allies in the air, in Ukraine, and geopolitical tensions are creeping, does this, do you think, could it have the hallmarks of Vladimir Putin getting involved?
It could do. I have to admit that when I was awoken at 6:20 this morning, because I'm up here in Bodø in northern Norway, and I was about to run an unruly airline passenger training course, ironically. When I heard the news that my flight this afternoon back to Heathrow had been cancelled, I immediately thought of two things. A, how could this possibly have happened at a Heathrow like London Heathrow, where one would have thought all the backups would be there, would have kicked in automatically? And secondly, of course, what is the cause? And, one of the things that immediately sprang to mind, but it is indeed pure speculation, was could this have a link to Russian involvement? Or could it indeed actually have a link to many of the climate crisis activist groups that are out there that could also target aviation and seek to disrupt it without necessarily harming lives in the process? It certainly disrupted our lives. That's what terrorists aim to do. That's what activists aim to do, sometimes for the best of reasons. And certainly there will be lessons learned, whatever the cause of this incident. Even if it is just a technical failure, a fire that has taken place, I'm sure that all the authorities, not only at London Heathrow, but around the world, will be rapidly revisiting their plans, their backup plans, looking at their backup generators and how they are supplied, and thinking about how we can guard against incidents such as this occurring in the first place.
Philip Baum, in terms of the chain reaction, it seems inconceivably idiotic to me as an outsider that one thing can go down and it puts the entire area into meltdown. How do you think could this have exploded, ignited, gone up in flames? If it were an outside agent, how would that be best achieved? Could you overload it externally via a cyber attack? Would it be an act of arson? Using your expertise, Philip Baum, what do you think could be the most likely explanation if it were an outside agent?
Well, I think all of the items, or list all above, as you've given some good examples there as to how it could be targeted. My guess is that it would involve some kind of insider action, and I think that's what keeps airport security managers awake at night around the globe. It's not the external actors, it's the people that work within the organisation. Are there people that could have malicious intent, that are privy to the vulnerabilities of the systems that we operate, that know what would happen if something was shut down or if something was ignited? They know what the knock-on effect would be. So I think we do need to wait, and as frustrating as it is, we need to wait to see what the counter-terrorism police establish. I think it is completely understandable that they are leading the inquiry. It's certainly what everybody behind the scenes will be worrying about, that this could be an intentional attack at an element of our critical national infrastructure. That is embarrassing for the state, is embarrassing for Heathrow, and would actually send shockwaves to the aviation industry, not only in the UK, but around the world.
Excellent analysis. And I tell you what, I think your courses in how to handle unruly passengers might have just exploded in terms of the demand. I mean, there'll be thousands and thousands of people.
Here I am in Border in northern Norway, where you're not really thinking about that many causes for unruly behaviour. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to be that unruly person this afternoon? But I would remind everybody that whatever the frustrations of and the inconvenience of what's happening today at Heathrow, it is not actually the fault of the airlines, and it is certainly not the fault of the crew and staff that are actually on operational duty. They are dealing with an incredibly stressful situation, and we need to show them respect.
Amen to that. Wise words, well spoken. Thanks for joining us, and I hope you get a safe journey home in good time. Philip Baum, aviation security expert, thank you very, very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, coming up, we'll be keeping you right up to date, of course, on the ongoing chaos at Heathrow Airport, and we'll be discussing the government's response to the ongoing speculation about potential Russian involvement. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Business News Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent? I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Time is 3:26 on this Friday afternoon with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, earlier today, the government spoke out about the ongoing situation at Heathrow, the absolute bedlam there, and they could not answer whether the airports will open tomorrow as hoped. The Number 10 spokesman said there will be significant disruption in the days ahead. And they also said that the fire is still burning, so it is very premature to go into the territory and speculation on foul play, adding that the Prime Minister is being kept updated. Well, let's get a political briefing now from our political editor, GB News presenter Chris Hope, who joins me in the studio. Chris, this is, frankly, a huge embarrassment for the entire nation and certainly for the Prime Minister, a Prime Minister that wanted to lead the air above Ukraine, wanted the RAF to be leading the skies, and now we can't get a single plane off the ground.
It's deeply embarrassing because whatever happened, a substation is on fire and it shut down UK airspace, probably, by the way, into the weekend. Look at the latest statement here my colleague Catherine Forster got from Heathrow Airport. They're saying it there. Now they expect significant disruption, Martin, over the coming days. And passengers shouldn't travel to the airport under any circumstances until it reopens. I mean, this morning, when I was at the briefing with the PM spokesman, they were saying 1 minute to midnight it reopens. That is looking less and less likely. If that happens, I fully expect the meeting of the Cobra group, that's cabinet ministers, maybe Keir Starmer chairing it, officials at the bowels of the cabinet office, they'll meet to work out what's next. We're going towards Do we need to do airlifts of people around the world? There are people trapped across the world right now. Will we need to bring them back? There's all sorts of difficult stories, human stories. You heard earlier from the Daily Mail travel editor there saying about people stuck and can't get to a wedding or wherever it might be. There's a human cost to this. It looks embarrassing. It shouldn't be the case that this substation could catch fire anyway. If there's foul play, again, the government says there's no evidence at the moment of that at the moment, but counter-terrorism police are investigating. So people are looking at this now. Just looking at the sabotage operations alleged by Russia since 2022 in 15 countries. Trains derailed, arsons attacked, Russia blamed, attacks on warehouses, trains, plus vital infrastructure, attacks on a Ukrainian warehouse in London last year, all blamed on Russia. It has happened before. It can't be ignored.
And the modus operandi of some of those attacks, and again, just to say, we don't know at all that this was anything to do with Vladimir Putin, but Russia has become adept at recruiting local criminals, poor immigrants and even the mentally vulnerable to carry out attacks for them, either physical or on the ground, by paying them money. And politically, it would be a huge embarrassment for the United Kingdom and the allies, the coalition of the willing, if the central hub of airspace were knocked out by such a basic attack on a power station.
Well, looking at Russia as a kind of stepping back from what's happening right now, there is a lot of happening in terms of developing this force to enforce a peace in Ukraine. That's developing at speed. They are now moving into an operational phase, we're told by Number 10 this morning, looking at aircraft, tanks, troop capabilities, operational planning will speed up next week. So the background of all this is Russia is this enemy, I think, for most of Europe, it seems, at the moment. And that's why anything that happens like this is being viewed through that prism.
And the notion that the leader of the coalition of the willing is ostensibly grounded, reputationally and politically, that's manna from heaven.
It's only Heathrow. Let's not forget that. We have other ports in the
land. But they're ground to a halt by the overspill from Heathrow. The point is, you've got flights destined for the United Kingdom that are landing on the continent.
Yeah, well, and elsewhere, and further afield than that. Don't go to Heathrow, we're told by Number 10 today. Airlines have a duty of care for anyone listening, watching this for GB News. The airlines have a duty of care to get you home. How that happens and when that happens, we'll wait and see. But they are saying there'll be a significant disruption in the days ahead. And looking at that Heathrow statement, it looks really, really serious.
And Chris Hope, in terms of protecting key strategic infrastructure, airports fully square into that. We've seen Just Stop Oil activists climbing under chicken wire at Stansted, lying on runways. If our airports are so porous on their borders, we've got a big problem. Do you think there'll be some sort of huge review into this and clamping down to make sure nobody can clamber in and cause trouble?
Well, the first review into our critical national infrastructure happened under David Cameron about 12, 14 years ago, and they've looked at power stations, nuclear facilities. I'm not sure whether substations near airports is part of that conversation, but clearly it needs
to be now. Because, one power station's gone down, and I'm no rocket scientist, Chris Hope, but how can it possibly be the case that one power station can go pop and the entire country is ground to a halt, the entire airport goes into darkness, and only now are they getting generators back on board so the lifts and the lights work? Astonishing.
I'm hearing from friends of mine, a friend of mine helps running a family farm. He's saying their family farm has enough generators to get us through a hurricane. So how can one of the world's top airports be disabled by a power outage a few miles away? Very odd. And that's just people who know about how to generate power on a farm.
And as we can see there, live pictures from Heathrow Airport, Chris Hope, the sky's empty. Just scenes we haven't seen since COVID lockdowns or when that volcano erupted over Norway. Astonishing silence over the skies of Heathrow. Huge, huge questions need to be asked. In fact, the only thing flying there, I think we saw a couple of pigeons. That's all that's in the area of Heathrow.
There we are, our feathered friends. It is embarrassing, no question.
It certainly is. And the feathers will be ruffled, certainly, in politics. Chris Hope, always a pleasure to have you in the studio. Lots more still to come between now and 4 o'clock, including, is Russia behind that fire which has caused chaos and left thousands of passengers stranded both in the United Kingdom and around the world. We're being contacted here at GB News by passengers stranded in Washington who can't get through to British Airways. Chris, we'll do our very best to keep you updated throughout the show. But first, here's your headlines, and it's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Your headlines at 3:33. Power has been restored to Heathrow Airport on an interim basis, according to the National Grid. It's after a fire at a nearby electrical substation forced Europe's busiest airport into shutdown. More than 1,300 flights have now been cancelled or diverted, affecting over 200,000 passengers and leaving planes and crews in the wrong locations. Counter-terrorism police are now leading an investigation into the blaze, though they say there's no indication of foul play. Power appears to be back on at Terminal 4, with lights in the main building and the lifts in the multi-storey car park back up and working again. However, the airport says disruption could last for days and passengers shouldn't travel to Heathrow until further notice. And let's cross now to the White House, where US President Donald Trump is speaking alongside Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth.
We're not even doing it as a cost item, although you will save probably half, maybe more than that. And you're not going to be at the bottom of the list. You're going to be much higher. And maybe you'll be, I will guarantee some of the states will be at the top of the list. They'll be comparable or better than these number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 the countries that are in the top 5 positions. So that's, to me, it's very exciting, and it's been received very well. So I just wanted to tell you about the student loans and special needs. But we're here for a reason today that is very exciting, and I'm thrilled to announce that at my direction, the United States Air Force is moving forward with the world's first 6th-generation fighter jet. Number 6, 6th generation. Nothing in the world comes even close to it. And it'll be known as the F-47. The generals picked a title, and it's a beautiful number, F-47. It's something the likes of which nobody has seen before in terms of all of the attributes of a fighter jet. There's never been anything even close to it, from speed to maneuverability to what it can have to payload. And this has been in the works for a long period of time. After a rigorous and thorough competition between some of America's top aerospace companies, the Air Force is going to be awarding the contract for the next generation air dominance platform to Boeing. As you know, it was highly competed for. There was a lot of competition, generals, and it's been going on for a long time. Very, very tough competition, but this plane is produced numbers that nobody's ever seen before. The F-47 will be the most advanced, most capable, most lethal aircraft ever built. An experimental version of the plane has secretly been flying for almost 5 years, and we're confident that it massively overpowers the capabilities of any other nation. There's no other nation. We know every other plane. I've seen every one of them, and it's not even close. This is a next level. You know, level 5 is good. This is level 6, they say. The F-47 is equipped with state-of-the-art stealth technology. It's virtually unseeable and unprecedented power. It's got the most power of any jet of its kind ever made. Maneuverability, likewise, is there's never been anything like it, despite the power and speed. Its speed is top. So over 2, which is something that you don't hear very often. America's enemies will never see it coming. Hopefully we won't have to use it for that purpose, but you have to have it. And if it ever happens, they won't know what the hell hit them. A new fleet of these magnificent planes will be built in the air during my administration over the next couple of years. It's ready to go. They've already built much of what has to be built in terms of production, including the sheds. We'll ensure that the USA continues to dominate the skies. We've given an order for a lot. We can't tell you the price because it would give way to some of the technology and some of the size of the plane, good-sized plane. This contract also represents a historic investment in our defense industrial base, helping to keep America at the cutting edge of aerospace and technology. Our allies are calling constantly. They want to buy them also, and certain allies will be selling them, perhaps toned-down versions. We like to tone them down about 10%, which probably makes sense because someday maybe they're not our allies, right? But I would like to ask Secretary Hegseth, who's doing a fantastic job. He's really been very inspiring in so many ways. And I must say that before he speaks, we have had record people wanting to join our military in the last 2.5 months, literally since this, I think probably since the election, November 5th, but especially since we came to office and since I announced Pete. He's young, he's smart, he's strong, he loves it, and they love him. But we've had record numbers of people wanting to join our military. Now, if you go back 6 months, it was the exact opposite. You had record numbers of people not wanting to join the military. Now you have record numbers of people wanting to be in our military. And that's a great honor. That shows you we're really on the right track. So, Pete, maybe you'd say a few words.
Sure.
Please.
Well, Mr. President, this is a big day. This is a big day for our warfighters. This is a big day for our country, a big day in the world. The name of this program is the Next Generation of Air Dominance. And, Mr. President, because of your leadership, your clarity, America is going to have generations in the future of air dominance because of this 6th generation fighter. We've had the F-15, we had the F-16, the F-18, the F-22, the F-35. Now we have the F-47, which sends a very direct, clear message to our allies that we're not going anywhere, and to our enemies that we will be able to project power around the globe unimpeded for generations to come. Mr. President, this is a gift to my kids and your kids, to my grandkids and your grandkids. This is a historic investment in the American military, in the American industrial base, in American industry that will help revive the warrior ethos inside our military, which we're doing, rebuild our military, which the previous administration did not do, by the way, Mr. President. They paused this program and were prepared to potentially scrap it. We know this is cheaper, longer range, and more stealthy. President Trump said we're reviving it and we're doing it. And then we are also going to reestablish deterrence. Under the previous administration, we looked like fools. Not anymore. President Trump has reestablished American leadership. The F-47 is part of it. And Mr. President, thank you for having the courage to do it and leading the way for all our warfighters.
Thank you very much, Pete. One of the things I will say, but the generals are going to speak in just a couple of seconds, but this plane flies with drones. It flies with many, many drones, as many as you want, and it's a technology that's new, but it doesn't fly by itself. It flies with many drones, as many as we want, and that's something that no other plane can do. So I'd like to introduce, if I might, Air Force Chief of Staff General David Alvin, and also General Dale White, two incredible people that I've known over the years, but I got to know them really well over the last few months. And would you say a few words, please, General?
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for your unwavering commitment to our military. I will say this is a big day. This is a big day for our United States Air Force as well. You know, air dominance is not a birthright, but it's become synonymous with American air power. But air dominance needs to be earned every single day. And since the earliest days of aerial warfare, brave American airmen have jumped into their machines, taken to the air, and they've cleared the skies. And whether that be clearing the skies so we can rain down destruction on our enemies from above, or we can clear the path to the ground forces below. That's been our commitment to the fight, and that's really been our promise to America. And with this F-47 as the crown jewel in the Next Generation Air Dominance family of systems, we're going to be able to keep that promise well into the future. I also want to thank everyone from industry and within government, our engineers, who have worked tirelessly on this program to bring it where we are right now today. This shows that American talent, American skill, and American determination are second to none, because this platform is second to none. So we believe that this provides more lethality, It provides more capability, more modernized capability in a way that is built to adapt. This, along with our collaborative combat aircraft the President talked about with drones, this is allowing us to look into the future and unlock the magic that is human-machine teaming. And as we do that, we're going to write the next generation of modern aerial warfare with this. This enables us to do this. The manner in which we put this program together puts more control in the hands of the government, so we can update and adapt at the speed of relevance, at the speed of technology, not at the speed of bureaucracy. This is more Air Force. This is more options for the President. We say as our mission in the United States Air Force is to fly, fight, and win air power anytime, anywhere. If you want to go anywhere, you have to have a platform that gets you anywhere. This provides the President options from the very one end, which is a quick response, and then we can get right back into fighting stance without having to deploy troops that are going to take maybe months and cost more lives. We can be back in fighting stance, and maybe we restore that deterrence. All the way to decisive victory as part of a joint force that is the most lethal and capable military ever known in history. That's what we provide now, and this allows us to provide it into the future. It's more deterrence, more capability. It's what peace through strength looks like into the future, Mr. President. And so we're very proud to do that. And all we can say is, on behalf of the United States Air Force, let's deliver.
Thank you very much. Thank you, General. Would you like to say something?
No, sir, I'll just double down what the chief said.
He knows what to do.
It's a generational
He knows who the boss is.
That's exactly right. Air superiority is what it's all about, and this is what we'll deliver.
That's great. Thank you very much. Great job. We've worked together long and hard on this, and this was a big secret. In fact, we don't show too much of the plane for that reason. You see what we show? You see how beautiful that is, but that's just a very small part of it.
Sure.
I wasn't surprised. I was wondering how much are you going to show when they came in with that. You see a wheel in the front? That's about it. Any questions?
Mr. President,
Peter?
is
80,000 pages of documents is a lot to sift through.
Yeah.
Can you just tell us who killed Kennedy?
Well, you know, I was given the task of releasing that because many presidents have gone through it and they haven't released. And I said, release. We even released Social Security numbers. I didn't want anything deleted. They said, sir, what about Social Security? People long gone, but they're long gone, so I can't imagine. But I said, if you don't delete it, if you do delete it, we have people are going to say, why did you delete it? There's something in there. So we gave Social Security, we gave everything. And the rest is for you to look at, Peter. You're going to see whether or not you see anything. But we've given it. We're doing it with Dr. Martin Luther King, too. They're preparing all of that. They're going to release everything. And whoever else they want. I mean, you know, we have nothing. We really have nothing to hide. We shouldn't have. You know, when a lot of time goes by. But with the Kennedy files, in particular, they were going crazy on them. I don't think there's anything that's earth-shattering, but you'll have to make that determination. In those, you know, it's 80,000. It's actually 88,000, and we have some additional things, as you know, come out today. And for that, you can go to the offices and you can see whatever you want to see. Everything is out there, totally open. The additional stuff is available later on today. You go over to the offices and you can have it immediately. And you'll make a determination.
And on something else, these Tren de Aragua guys, because of your executive order, they are designated as foreign terrorists.
Yeah.
If ISIS or Al-Qaeda foreign terrorists were operating here in the United States, cops would probably be shooting first and asking questions later. And so what is the difference between terrorists, between somebody like an ISIS or an Al-Qaeda operative versus a MS-13 or Tren de Aragua?
Well, these are people that focus on destroying people in their homes. They're not as international in that sense. They're a group of thugs. They come from Venezuela. They come from the prisons of Venezuela. They're very, very dangerous people, but they didn't look so dangerous when the guards took care of the situation from El Salvador. And I want to thank the president. He's a friend of mine. He's done a great job. But I just can't imagine that the Democrats are taking this issue where they want to have them back. You know, so now they have men playing in women's sports. They have transgender for everyone. They have open borders. They have all of their crazy policies that are, I think, 95-5, not 90-10, okay? And their new policy is, let's bring Trinidad back into our country. Let's bring the worst. These are the worst gang members there are. They looked amazingly frail, though, by the way they were handled. It's very amazing. You know, they weren't, when they were in Colorado cutting the fingers off a man because he made a phone call to the police, they seemed a lot tougher then than they did when they were having their heads shaved and they were in shackles. They're tough people. They're bad people. We don't want them in our country. We can't let a judge say that he wants him. You know, he didn't run for president. He didn't get much more than 80 million votes. And we just can't let that happen. It'd be so bad for our country. I won on the basis of getting criminals out of our country that were let in. It was called unforced error. They were let in by Biden, incompetently let in, and let in by the millions, actually. 21 million people. I believe it's 21 million. And that's not even including the gotaways, but these are rough people. We want them out of our country. And I won the election based at least partly on that, and that's a big part, yeah?
Mr. President, there's several...
I don't know if you saw this. Tim Walz is now saying about Trump supporters, and forgive me, I'm just reading a quote from Tim Walz, I think I could kick most of their ass.
Oh, boy, he'd be in trouble.
Is there any way to know?
Well, he's a loser, you know, I mean, the guy's a loser. He lost an election. He played a part. You know, usually a vice president doesn't play a part, they say. I think Tim played a part. I think he was so bad that he hurt her. But she hurt herself, and Joe hurt them both. They didn't have a great group, but I would probably put him at the bottom of the group.
Have you heard that Biden wants to get back involved for Democratic politicians, fundraising and campaigning against your policies?
I hope so. I hope so.
Mr. President, there are several families. Mr. President, there are families from some of the people.
Who are you with?
I'm with La Nación newspaper from Argentina. There are families from some of the people that were on those flights to El Salvador that claim that they're not criminals, they're not members of Tren de Aragua, of MS-13. What can you tell them, and what guarantees can you give them that everyone in those planes were actual criminals, terrorists, as you said?
Well, I was told that they went through a very strong vetting process, and that that will also be continuing in El Salvador. And if there's anything like that, we would certainly want to find out. But these were a bad group. This was a bad group, and they were in bad areas, and they were with a lot of other people that were absolutely killers, murderers, and people that were really bad with the worst records you've ever seen. And but we will continue that process, absolutely. We don't want to make that kind of a mistake.
Is the U.S. planning to give up the position of NATO's Supreme Allied Commander, and if so, why?
NATO is something that I saved. NATO was gone until I came along. In fact, the previous Secretary General, very good man, both of them are good. The current man is fantastic. But both of them have said, if it wasn't for Trump, you wouldn't even have a NATO, because we were paying the cost of almost all of the countries. And now they're paying. I said, we're not going to do this. We're not going to continue. You hurt us on trade. You do bad things on trade. And then on top of it, we're supposed to pay for your military. And because of what I did, hundreds of billions of dollars flowed into NATO by countries that just weren't paying. They were delinquent. They weren't paying their bills. So NATO is solid. They're strong. But they have to treat us fairly.
Are we going to give up the...
Because, look, without us, NATO's not the same thing. And I can tell you, I've been having very good discussions, as you know, with President Zelensky and with President Putin. And President Putin will tell you that without the United States, he wouldn't be worried. But he is worried when the United States is involved. And I have to tell you, I've dealt very well with both gentlemen, and we have, I think we have the confines of a deal. I hope we have the confines of a deal. I'm doing it for two reasons. Number one, and by far most importantly, thousands of young people, and they're not American people, they're Russian and they're Ukrainian, are being killed every week, thousands a week. And also the United States has paid, because of Biden, $350 billion on a war that should have never happened. If we had a competent president in this, sitting right here, that war would have never happened. It would have absolutely never happened with me. And it didn't happen. For 4 years, it didn't happen.
Mr. President, do you think you have the authority, the power to round up people, deport them, and then you're under no obligation to a court to show the evidence against them?
Well, that's what the law says, and that's what our country needs, because we were unfortunately, they allowed millions of people to come into our country, totally unvetted, totally
Okay, so
we've
lost
the authority to allow millions of people. Did Biden have the authority to do something that's unthinkable? Have open borders where millions of people poured into our country, totally unvetted and totally unchecked, just as you would say. And many of those people were criminals. Many of them were from jails and prisons and mental institutions and gang members and drug dealers and very dangerous people. Many were murderers. We have 11,088 that we know of murderers they murdered. Of that number, at least half killed more than one person. They're in our country. They're in a location near you. Biden allowed that to happen to our country. And his people that really ran the country. And the person that operated the auto pen, I think we ought to find out who that was, because I guess that was the real president. So when you ask me if we have the authority, did Biden have the authority to allow millions of people to come into our country? Many of these people hardened criminals at the top of the line who have caused tremendous damage in our country. You see them in New York City fighting with our police. I mean, literally having fist fights in the street with our police. These are tough, hard criminals. Many of them came out of jails, and not just South America, from all over the world. They came out from Africa, from the Congo. They came out from Asia. Not just South America, but many from South America. These are hard, tough criminals, and we have to get them out. And a judge sitting behind a bench someplace got a nice appointment. You can't take that away from the people that are responsible. Now, in this case, Marco Rubio has a lot of big decisions to make, and he's a fantastic person, a great man. I think he'll be our best. I think he has a chance to be our best Secretary of State. He's been doing incredibly. He works so hard. He's gone to so many different countries already, and he's got the authority to get bad people out of our country. And you can't stop that with a judge sitting behind a bench that has no idea what goes on, who happens to be a radical left lunatic.
Do you think the judiciary?
You guys today are denying this New York Times report that Elon Musk was going to be shown a 20 to 30 page presentation about a theoretical war plan against China. Why not just show it to Elon?
Because I don't want to show it to anybody. You know, you're talking about a potential war with China. Now, I deal with these people all the time, and I'm dealing with Pete. I'm dealing with these gentlemen on numerous different airplane purchases, and I think they're all going to be great. But I don't want other people seeing, anybody seeing potential war with China. We don't want to have a potential war with China, but I can tell you if we did, we're very well equipped to handle it. But I don't want to show that to anybody. But certainly you wouldn't show it to a businessman who is helping us so much. He's a great patriot. He's paying a big price for helping us cut costs, and he's doing a great job. He's finding tremendous waste, fraud, and abuse. But I certainly wouldn't want, Elon has businesses in China, and he would be susceptible perhaps to that. But it was such a fake story. The New York Times is just as fake as CNN and MSDNC. And anybody read that story, people laughed at that story. Who would do such a thing? And the first thing I did is I called Susie and I called Pete. I said, is there any truth to that? And they said, it's ridiculous. No, he's over there to talk about costs. You might want to address that, Pete. But Elon was over there today to address costs. Doge, thing called Doge, which you've heard about. Pete?
That's exactly right, Mr. President. You pointed out it was a fake story. We pointed out it was meant to sort of undermine whatever relationship the Pentagon has with Elon Musk. Elon Musk is a patriot. Elon Musk is an innovator. Elon Musk provides a lot of capabilities our government and our military rely on, and I'm grateful for that. We welcomed him today to the Pentagon to talk about Doge, to talk about efficiencies, to talk about innovations. It was a great informal conversation. The rest of that reporting was fake. There was no war plans. There was no Chinese war plans. There was no secret plans. That's not what we were doing at the Pentagon.
I might add that I think Elon, if they ever wanted to do that, I think Elon wouldn't do it. I think he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't want to put himself in that position. But if you read what's out of the New York Times, it's such a dishonest newspaper. It's such garbage. It's, it used to be called all the news that's fit to print. Well, it's all the news that's not fit to print. They have fake sources. or they don't have sources. I think they make most of it up. But this was a made-up story by the New York Times. I call it the failing. It's a failing newspaper. It's failing. And they shouldn't do that. They really are the enemy of the people.
And something else, I don't know if
We do need honest journalism in this. You know, we've made such big strides over the last 2 months, but we just need honest journalism, and we don't have it. When you have a CNN, you have to watch these people every once in a while just to see where they're coming from, and it's so dishonest. MSNBC is, I think, probably worse, and they're both doing horribly in the ratings. I think they're going to be turned off. I don't think they're not doing any ratings. You're doing well in the ratings.
Thank you.
I understand that your trade rep is meeting their Chinese counterpart next week.
Yes.
Is there anything that they can do to stop April 2nd or to roll back the tariffs that you put on China already?
Well, we can talk, but basically, I call April 2nd. I would have made it April 1st, but I didn't want to be April Fool's Day because then nobody would believe what I said, and they do believe me. April 2nd is going to be Liberation Day for America. We've been ripped off by every country in the world, friend and foe. We've been ripped off on trade. We've been ripped off on military. We protect people, and they don't do anything for us. It's just so unfair for years and years. And now some of that money is going to be coming back to us in the form of tariffs. I mean, tens of billions. It's going to be numbers like nobody's ever seen. So NVIDIA announced today, you saw that, hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. The biggest chip maker in the world announced hundreds of billions of dollars of investment. Hundreds of billions, not millions, but billions. They're all coming here. Apple just announced $500 billion worth. They're going to build plants here. You know, they built their plants in China. They're going to build them here. And they're starting immediately. We have investment, the likes of which this country has never seen, already announced. And they all want to have news conferences. I don't have enough time to have that many news conferences, but I would say so far at least $4 trillion. $4 trillion is coming in. Car companies, very importantly, a lot of the car companies that we're going to build in Mexico or Canada are now building here, because I don't want cars from Canada. I don't want cars from Mexico. They want to do it, it's fine, but I want the car companies to build here, not... You know, they were building in Mexico 3 plants, big plants, really big plants, and they were going to sell the cars right across the border. We wouldn't have the jobs, we wouldn't have the profits, we wouldn't get the taxes, we get nothing. All we get is unemployment and empty factories. Those days are over. So now those 3 places are going to build here, but many more than that. We have a big one. Honda is building, just announced a really big plant in Indiana, great state, smart place to build. And we have many car companies coming here. The steel mills are going to be booming, And many other things, you know, many other things come with that. But we need that for defense. You know, there are certain things you have to have. You have to have steel. We would have had, if I didn't do in my first term tariffs to stop the onslaught, because they were dumping steel in order to destroy our steel plants. If I didn't do 50% and even 100% in certain cases tariffs on steel, you wouldn't have a steel plant in the United States. And Biden was unable to get rid of those tariffs because they threw off so much money that his numbers, which didn't work anyway because his numbers were terrible, what he did, the way he spent money was so horrible, and what he allowed to happen to energy. That's the other thing. Energy is going to be like it's never been before. Mr. Vice President is here. Do you have anything to say while you're here? He's a very good Vice President.
I'm just here to watch the show, sir. Okay. I think airplanes are pretty cool, so I wanted to check this out.
Airplane's cool. It is cool.
Mr. President, to take off the trade war at this point, though?
Well, I'll be speaking to President Xi. I have a great relationship with him. We're going to have a very good relationship. But we have a $1 trillion deficit because of Biden with President Xi. More than that. I mean, I've heard $1.2 trillion. We have a deficit. And I've explained that to President Xi. We also have a problem where he's allowing fentanyl to be sent into Mexico and then cross the border and, you know, killing. I think the number is much higher than the 125, 115 I think it's closer to 300,000 people a year. And so that's a problem. But they have They have a tremendous surplus against the United States, and we don't want that.
Mr. President, why do you answer Ukraine's power?
A number of ministries have come to you asking for exemptions on tariffs. Is that something that is under consideration by you?
Well, people are coming to me and talking about tariffs, and a lot of people are asking me if they could have exceptions. And once you do that for one, you have to do that for all. So, I mean, generally, I did something interestingly during 2 weeks ago. I gave the American car companies a break because it would have been unfair if I didn't. And everybody said, oh, he changed his mind on tariffs. I didn't change my mind. I helped our, sort of big three, big four. I helped some of the American companies. And instead of taking it properly, they said, oh, he changed it. I don't change, but the word flexibility is an important word. Sometimes there's flexibility, so there'll be flexibility. But basically, it's reciprocal, so that if China's charging us 50% or 30% or 20%, and I don't mean China, I mean anybody, any country, Canada. Nobody knows that Canada's charging our dairy farmers. They have 270% tariffs. Nobody knows that. Nobody knows that. They have up to 400%. They have a couple of tariffs at 400%. Nobody knows that. Nobody talks about that. And remember, with Canada, we don't need their cars. We don't need their lumber. We don't need their energy. We don't need anything from Canada. And yet it costs us $200 billion a year in subsidy to keep Canada afloat. So when I say they should be a state, I mean that. I really mean that. Because we can't be expected to carry a country that is right next to us on our border. It would be a great state. It would be a cherished state. The taxes for Canadian citizens would go down in less than half. They don't spend money on military because they think we're going to protect them. There are many things that they do, like icebreakers. They want us to provide icebreakers for them. Oh, that's wonderful. So the Canada, they're very tough traders too. I want to just tell you, of all the people, they're tough traders. They trade very tough. And, the expression I use is, some people don't have the cards. I used that expression about a week and a half ago, right? Somebody was negotiating who didn't have the cards, who's now, I think, saying that he wants to do it, and I think we're going to have a big deal on that very special something. We got to make a deal on that. But Canada has been a very nasty negotiator against the United States, took advantage of the United States for a long time. But nobody knows that they were getting 270% tariffs on dairy products.
Mr. President, and I don't think I've heard you say this in all of the talk about Canada becoming the 51st state. Are you concerned that if they became the 51st state, they would be a very, very blue state? Very, very big and very, very blue.
No, there might be, but it would, you have that artificial line that goes, that straight artificial, that looked like it was drawn by a ruler. Somebody with I don't mean a ruler like a king, I mean like a ruler, this way. And it's just an artificial line that was drawn in the sand or in the ice. And can I tell you, Peter, just, you add that to this country, what a beautiful landmass, the most beautiful landmass anywhere in the world. And it was just cut off for whatever reason. It would be great. Now, is it liberal? Maybe. But, a conservative, until I got involved, because I don't care who wins up there. I frankly probably would do better with the liberal than the conservative, if you want to know the truth. But just a little while ago, before I got involved and totally changed the election, which I don't care about, probably it's to our advantage, actually. But the conservative was leading against, I call him Governor Trudeau. The conservative was leading by 35 points. So, so I don't know about that. I think Canada is a place like a lot of other places. If you have a good candidate, the candidate's going to win.
And the two astronauts that you just helped save from space, they didn't get any overtime pay for all that extra time. They got $5 a day per diem.
Oh.
For 286 days, that is $1,430 in extra pay. Is there anything the administration can do to get them, to make them whole?
Well, nobody's ever mentioned this to me. If I have to, I'll pay it out of my own pocket, okay? I'll get it for them.
Mr. President,
I'll take care of that. I like that. I think that I'll pay it right out of my... Is that all? That's not a lot for what they had to go through. And I want to thank Elon Musk, by the way, because think if we don't have him. You know, there's only so long, even though they're in the capsule up there, that the body starts to deteriorate after 9 or 10 months and gets really bad after 14, 15 months with the bones and the blood and all the things that you've been reporting on very well. And if we don't have Elon, they could be up there a long time. Who else is going to get him? And I just want to thank him. He's going through a lot, what they're doing to him. And these people are going to be caught, and they're going to be caught, and they're going to be prosecuted. And from what they tell me, I see this just by watching your programs and reading the news, but from what they tell me, they could get 20 years in jail, and they'll get it. I'll tell you, there's going to be no leniency, and there'll be no pardons. I can tell you that right
now. And you
now.
said this morning 20 years in jail, and then maybe you said this morning 20 years in jail, and then maybe they'll go to one of these prisons in El Salvador. Do you think with the way that the judges have been issuing injunctions, it would be easier or harder to send these Tesla domestic terrorists to a jail in El Salvador than these MS-13 or Tren de Aragua guys?
Well, I view these people as terrorists just like others. When I looked at those showrooms burning and those cars, not one or two, like 7, 8, 10 burning, exploding all over the place. These are terrorists. You didn't have that on January 6th, I can tell you. You didn't have anything like that on January 6th, which is sort of amazing because on January 6th, the Democrats were talking. Nobody was killed other than a very beautiful young woman, Ashley Babbitt. Nobody was killed. And you look at what's going on now with these terrorists. These are terrorists, and that's an organized event. You know, take a look at their signs. Take a look. They're all made by the same sign company. A nice, expensive job. Now, these are the people that finance it are, in my opinion, in just as big a trouble as the people that are setting the match and setting the fires. So we'll see. It's under very serious investigation by the FBI and by the Justice Department. These people are terrorists. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, behind you, please.
Mr. President, what do you say to American military families who are seeing Elon Musk at the Pentagon today, are hearing about Defense Department cuts, and their thoughts are immediately going to the safety of their loved ones who are currently deployed?
Well, we're making our country strong. And when they see a thing like that and they hear that story about Elon in China, what they should do is realize that the New York Times is a corrupt institution, because I think they're the ones. They knew that story wasn't true. Nobody believed that story. People that, when I first called, they laughed when they heard this story. Nobody believed it, that the Pentagon was giving him a briefing on what war with China would look like, and he has business. No, they made that up because it's a good story to make up. They're very dishonest people. Look, I have it with the Times, and you'll see more and more of it. To me, it's a very, very dishonest organization. But a story like that is made up. It's total fiction. And I just wanted to make sure. I called up Chief of Staff and I called up Pete, and I said, "Is there any truth to that?" Absolutely not. He's there for Doge, not there for China. And if you ever mention China, I think he'd walk out of the room. He wouldn't take it anyway. So it's just a made-up story. Nobody's taken better care of the military. One of the things that I know that Pete's doing is he's talking about a lot of the civilian staff, and we're going to get them other jobs. You know, we're going to have a lot of jobs in this country, but we don't want to have wasteful jobs. We want to have meaningful jobs. And those were wasteful jobs. Those are jobs that not only military, but jobs where people don't show up. You take a look at Department of Education. I've never seen so many buildings with the names on it. You go past one after another Department of Education, and they're empty. The people don't show up. You know why? Because they have other jobs, because they're playing golf, or they're playing something, they're doing something. And we have a lot of great people, but we have to move that back to the States. We're going to make our country strong, and we're going to get people much better jobs, because we have companies moving into our country, the likes of which we've never seen before. Nothing like this has happened. And it's automatic. They don't want to pay the tariffs. How do you avoid paying the tariffs? You build your plant in the United States, and it's a beautiful thing to see. I see it. So far, I would say $4 trillion. Nobody's ever heard of them. No country's ever heard of numbers like that. $4 trillion, and those are the best ones. The biggest, best chip maker in the world. I'm not a fan of the CHIP Act, where you give billions of dollars away to companies that don't need it. and it won't bring them here. I'm giving nothing away. All they're doing is coming here. They're building because they want to avoid. Remember this on the tariffs, too, because that's going to be, Liberation Day, April 2nd. It's reciprocal. If they charge us, we charge them. So somebody say, well, how much are the tariffs? Very fair. If India, as an example, has been very good to us on tariffs. They charge 100%, 200%, whatever they charge. Now, Europe just announced they're lowering the tariffs on cars. We charge, like a joke, 2.5%. That's what this country charges. Europe just announced that they're reducing their tariffs on cars to 2.5%. It's nice. But they also have non-monetary tariffs where they make it impossible for the cars to get in even without the dollars on them and the dollar signs. It's called the non-monetary tariff, where they put on controls where no matter what happens, because they don't want cars, they don't want the American car in their market. And yet they send us millions of cars. They send us big agriculture. They don't want our agriculture. They don't want anything from us. European Union's very tough. But now it's fair. So whatever they do to us, we do to them.
Mr. President,
as Russia continues to attack Ukraine, are you planning to impose any sort of
Well,
sanctions?
they're fighting against each other. Yeah, I think we're going to have, we have a ceasefire on a lot of areas, and so far that's all held very well. And getting that ceasefire, they had a lot of guns pointing at each other. You had some soldiers, unfortunately, surrounded by other soldiers, and they are going to be, I believe we're going to have, pretty soon have a full ceasefire, and then we're going to have a contract. And the contract's being negotiated, the contract in terms of dividing up the lands, et cetera, it's being negotiated as we speak.
What do you say to critics who say that your actions towards law firms amount to coercion?
Well, the law firms all want to make deals. You mean the law firms that we're going after, that went after me for 4 years ruthlessly, violently, illegally? You mean, are those the law firms you're talking about? They're not babies. They're very sophisticated people. Those law firms did bad things, bad things. They went after me for years. Russia hoax, all a hoax. It was a hoax. It was Hunter Biden's laptop. It didn't come out of Russia, by the way. It was came out of his bedroom. It was all a hoax, developed by Democrats. Hillary, I don't think Biden did, because I don't think Biden knows what the hell he's doing, frankly, based on everything I see. I've seen things since being here that are so sad, what he's done to this country, what he and they did to this country, those people that surrounded him, who, by the way, are radical left but smart. He's not smart. He was never smart. But these are radical left, smart people. They totally controlled him. He did whatever they told him to do. And it's a shame. It's so sad to see what happened, what they've done to this country, both not only the inflation you saw, but allowing millions of criminals, millions and millions of criminals into our country. That's an inexcusable act. And many other things besides that. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
And that was Donald Trump addressing the world and the press at the White House. Initially, this was a press conference to announce the F-47, the new flagship fighter jet. He said it's a beautiful number, the F-47. It will be built by Boeing. Boeing, of course, the airline, there's been a huge pressure, been safety issues around a lot of their craft, but Boeing, it's an American company, of course. Donald Trump, America first, giving that contract, the military contract, huge contract, to Boeing to project power around the world and historical investment to restore the warrior ethos. Very thumping of the chest there. The crown jewel of our military then went on to talk about Venezuela. Of course, the deportation of a lot of hardcore criminals was asked by the press, how did you know they were all the correct kind of criminals? He said they were thoroughly vetted. I'm confident we're rid of bad people. April the 2nd, of course, is when the tariffs come in. He said, will be Liberation Day. We've been ripped off by every country from around the entire world for years, echoing things he said before. He was saying that US steel plants were massacred by Joe Biden in terms of tariffs. It was so horrible. He then said that taxes for Canadian citizens will halve if they agree to our tariffs. Wasn't much detail on that. That's about the astronauts who splashed down into the ocean yesterday. The journalist said they hadn't received back pay, which amounted to about $1,450 each. Donald Trump said, I didn't know about that. Is that all? He said, if I have to, I'll pay that from my own pocket. He went, I think that's pretty neat. He's going to pay those journalists, those astronauts, beg your pardon, out of his own pocket. He then said, I'd like to thank Elon Musk, who'd been under attack today. A story had been briefed to the press in America that he'd been briefed on a potential war with China. He said, that's a made-up story. It's fake news. He was there to talk about Doge and efficiency. India also has been very, very bad for us. The usual expansive press conference there from Donald Trump. Let's return back to domestic matters now, and the huge story of the day. And that, of course, is the travel chaos for thousands today at Britain's busiest airport. Heathrow has been shut down until midnight. Well, actually, it could be longer. We are hearing a fire at a nearby electrical substation has caused a mass power outage, disrupting flights around the entire world. The counter-terrorism police are now leading the investigation into that fire. Well, let's cross live now. We're around the country bringing all of the latest. We've got Mark White, who's in West London for us, and Steve Bennett is outside Heathrow Airport. Gentlemen, welcome back to the show, and thank you for patiently waiting for Donald Trump to finish. As you both know, this can take some time. Steve, let's cross first to you. So earlier on, you're saying the only thing flying above you there was seen to be a pigeon. Is there any sign, any news yet of when the aircraft might leap back into action?
Martin, hello to you. Yep, you're right. The skies are empty. There's nothing above us. It's the first time I've ever seen it, and the locals are saying it's been years since there's been no aviation in the skies above them. Normally, Heathrow Airport, the busiest in Britain, one of the busiest in Europe, it would be dealing with 250,000 passengers today passing through here, either at their final destination here in Britain or passing on through to other destinations. And when the announcement was made that Heathrow was closed, approximately 120 flights were already on their way here, so those flights had to either turn back round or divert to other airports, which they did, and passengers now are in a situation where they're scattered all over the globe, as are the planes, and as are the crews. This will take days to rectify, because if it does open at midnight, which is being initially suggested, it will still be days into the weekend and possibly into next week before we see any real change, because there's such a backlog of passengers who need to get to where they're going. I've seen air stewardesses, I've seen air stewards who have been basically sent back to their hotels. They've got nowhere to fly because their planes are grounded. So the disruption continues here at London Heathrow.
Thank you, Steve Bennett. For now, the skies are empty above Heathrow, but Mark White, I believe you have a developing newsline for us. There could be a resumption of some flights. Tell us more.
Yes, it's just coming through from Heathrow Airport now, confirming that they are able to restart flights, that they will be starting some flights tomorrow, and they hope that they'll be able to have a full service tomorrow. I'll just read some of the statement to you. They say, our teams have worked tirelessly since the incident to ensure a speedy recovery. We're now safely able to restart flights, prioritising, they say, repatriation and the relocation of aircraft. So in other words, you've got tens of thousands of passengers who are stranded in locations, yes, around the UK, but actually that's less of a problem. They're stranded in France, they're stranded in the Netherlands, in Germany, even further afield. We've been told of flights that have actually been stranded or diverted to Iceland. So, some real far-flung places over the other side of the Atlantic that this is affecting as well, Martin. That statement goes on to say, Heathrow Airport advises that passengers do not travel to the airport unless, they say, the airline has told them to do so. you know, yet again today, even though the airport was completely shut, there were a number of people that decided for whatever reason that they were going to just chance their arm anyway and head to the airport, which was clearly ridiculous given that nothing was leaving that airport all day. But now they're just reiterating, only travel to the airport if you're contacted by the airline and you get word from the airline that your flight will be departing. They say we hope to run a full operation tomorrow and will provide further information shortly. And the statement continues, our priority remains the safety of our passengers and those working at the airport. We apologise, it says, for the inconvenience caused by this incident. Well, you know, that's the first statement today from Heathrow Airport, really, of any significance on this incident. Scant information about what the resilience plans were, why on earth we didn't get anything in the way of actually backup generators that were able to keep these terminals open, to keep at least some flights flying. They've got to answer these questions, I think, as a matter of urgency, Martin.
Mark White, I think you're absolutely correct. We're still being contacted by passengers stranded in America here at GB News who can't get through to an airline. They haven't got a Scooby-Doo what's going on. Thank you, gentlemen, both, for bringing us up to speed. And Mark White, there's some crumbs of comfort for passengers and also Steve Bennett. Gentlemen, great job as ever. Thank you very, very much. Now, our teams have worked tirelessly since the incident to ensure a speedy recovery is the statements coming out, and we're now safely able to restart flights, prioritising repatriation and relocation of aircraft. Please do not travel to the airport unless your airline has advised you to do so. And we hope to run a full operation tomorrow and will provide further information shortly. Our priority remains the safety of our passengers and those working at the airport. We apologise for the inconvenience caused by this incident. That's the Heathrow Airport statement there, coming many, many hours after that substation went into meltdown. Now, coming up, we'll be keeping you right up to date, of course, of the ongoing chaos at Heathrow Airport, and we'll be discussing the government's response to the ongoing speculation about Russian involvement. Did Putin do it? Why would he do it? And how might that have happened? That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here with an exclusive opportunity just for you, our incredible GB News viewers. We're giving you the opportunity to win a VIP studio tour right here at GB News HQ. Plus, you'll also get to meet yours truly. It's easy to enter, just head to gbnews.com/community competition and follow the easy steps. Don't miss out, enter now, and I'll see you soon at GB News. Full T's and C's apply.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Time is 4:28 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, travel chaos for thousands today. Britain's busiest airport, Heathrow, has shut down after a fire at a nearby electrical substation has caused that mass power outage, disrupting flights around the entire world. Well, counter-terrorism police are now leading the investigation into that fire, but it has now emerged that Heathrow says it will resume some flights later on today. Well, some crumbs of comfort there, but the post-mortem about who done it and how was it done is likely to start. And let's speak now with the national security and counter-terrorism expert, Anthony Glees. Anthony, welcome to the show. The fire is still smouldering. Mark White, who's on the ground there, told us it's still too hot to investigate, still too hot to go in. But no doubt the conversation, of course, will go to who done it. Why would they do it? And top of that list at the moment, no proof, of course, is Vladimir Putin. May I ask you, what potential benefit, if that were the case, would there be for Putin to attack something like Heathrow?
Well, I think the benefit would be huge to Putin, and on Twitter X, Putin's friend Medvedev is busy boasting about how people are going to suspect Russia and ha ha ha. It makes us look stupid, and it makes us look stupid particularly in the context of what the Prime Minister did on Wednesday, when I believe he was the first British Prime Minister ever to be filmed on one of our Vanguard nuclear submarines. And then on Thursday, yesterday, he was at the keel laying of the next class of Britain's nuclear submarines, the Dreadnought class. And our Defence Secretary, John Healey, said very specifically that we had it in our power to do great damage to Russia. So we've been making very tough noises, rightly so in my view, absolutely correctly. And then within hours, it is as if Heathrow Airport was switched off for a day. It's important to remember, I think, that there are over 585,000 electricity substations in the UK. And the fact that this one in particular should have suffered from what may prove to have been a freak accident could be a coincidence too many. If you look at the films you've been showing of the blaze, what does it remind people of? It reminds us of what we're seeing the Russians doing to Ukraine every single evening, getting at energy installations and trying to cause chaos in that way. So it certainly looks seriously as if it could have been a Russian act of sabotage or act of war, if you prefer it, because that's what it is in Ukraine. I wouldn't be surprised if that is what it was and it had been caused by a drone, because it's very difficult to get into these substations. I mean, we've all seen them. They're all surrounded by very high steel perimeter fencing and so forth. So it looks that way. And the fact that the counter-terrorist police are leading the operation, counter-terrorist police, of course, work hand in glove with MI5, the security service, in the context of what our Prime Minister has been doing and saying, makes me think that it is by no means improbable that this was a Russian attack. And there's something else to be pointed to, which is in March of last year, a warehouse in Leighton in East London was firebombed by a man who has pleaded guilty, not just to doing the firebombing, but also to working for Russian intelligence as their agent. So Russia has a track record of this stuff, even in the United Kingdom. And if it should prove to be the case, it would, of course, be a very, very serious matter.
And Anthony Glees, of course, we are speculating at present. The government is saying there's no suggestion of foul play, but this is an active investigation and live pictures on our screens now, Anthony Glees. The skies above Heathrow, utterly empty. The likes of which we haven't seen since COVID lockdowns or since, of course, the Icelandic volcano grounded most of the world's aircraft. An astonishing act with a huge and tangible impact. And if, Anthony, it were to be an outside agent to have done this, it sends a clear message that Britain is extremely vulnerable.
Well, exactly so. And that is very, very worrying. It's an entirely different story as to why there's no backup, as to why this could happen in any case, and doubtless we'll hear about that story. But Heathrow is a key part of our critical national infrastructure in this country. So important, the Chancellor of the Exchequer and the Prime Minister supported the building of the third runway at Heathrow on economic grounds. So it's not just about the appalling distress that is caused the ordinary passengers. It's also about the economic impact on the UK. But above all, it's about our prestige. You know, there we are investing in, rightly, as I say, rightly, investing in the next generation of nuclear-powered submarines which will carry nuclear weapons, which could obliterate an enemy. Yet we cannot look after our own backyard. And I think very serious questions have to be raised about this one way or the other. Let's hope it was an accident, but it doesn't look like an accident. And if it doesn't look like an accident, then a proper and immediate investigation. I think we will know fairly soon. They can tell, experts can tell very quickly if this was caused by an explosion. And if it wasn't, well, you know, we can't be happy, but at least we can feel we're perhaps being saved something. But the warehouse fire in Leighton and other intelligence operations from Salisbury and the Bulgarian network in the east of England there, they all are pointing us in one direction. We need to, you know,
Anthony Glees, we have to leave it there. Fascinating stuff, and live pictures on your screen now of fire crews doing their very best to extinguish the remnants of this smouldering fire, and then that full investigation will continue. National security and counter-terror expert Anthony Glees, fascinating. Thanks for your expertise on the show today. Now let's get straight into your latest news headlines with Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. Your headlines at 4:34. Heathrow Airport has just issued a statement saying it is able to restart flights and that it hopes to run a full service from tomorrow. Power has been restored to the airport on an interim basis, according to the National Grid. It's after a fire at a nearby electrical substation forced Europe's busiest airport into shutdown. More than 1,300 flights have been cancelled or diverted, affecting over 200,000 passengers and leaving planes and crews in the wrong locations. Counter-terrorism police are now leading an investigation into the blaze, though they say there's no indication of foul play. The airport says disruption could still last for days and passengers shouldn't travel to Heathrow until further notice. Now, Donald Trump has awarded Boeing with a new F-47 fighter jet contract.
At my direction, the United States Air Force is moving forward with the world's first sixth-generation fighter jet. Number sixth generation. Nothing in the world comes even close to it. After a rigorous and thorough competition between some of America's top aerospace companies, the Air Force is going to be awarding the contract for the next generation air dominance platform to Boeing.
Speaking live from the Oval Office, the US President announced a new sixth-generation fighter jet for the US Air Force would be developed by the struggling company. For Boeing, the win marks a reversal of fortune for a company that has suffered on both the commercial and defence side of its business following a string of safety issues. In other news, a man who took a bomb into a Leeds hospital intending to kill as many nurses as possible has been jailed for life. Mohammed Farouk has been jailed at Sheffield Crown Court for life for a minimum term of 37 years. Farouk, who was a trainee nurse, was last year found guilty of attempting to launch an IS-inspired suicide attack using a homemade bomb on the hospital where he worked in 2023. And the Prince of Wales is in Estonia for the first time, visiting British troops, bolstering NATO's eastern flank under Operation K-Brit. He'll take part in a formal handover between the Royal Dragoon Guards and the Mercian Regiment at Tapa Camp. The Prince will also see field training exercises and the weapon systems being used by the Mercians. He's expected to meet Estonian troops and speak with welfare teams about mental health support, and he'll end the visit chatting with NATO personnel at the camp's canteen. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2896 and €1.1929. The price of gold is £2,336 and 31 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,651 points.
Done. My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report. Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. Heathrow Airport remains closed to all flights in and out of Heathrow. This is after a fire and a power cut earlier. On the roads in Park Royal, the North Circular is shut eastbound. That's after a lorry caught fire at the Park Royal interchange. And in Walthamstow, Forest Road has been shut in both directions. That's now closed following a collision between Green Ferry Way and the Black Horse Road turnoff. So do expect queues on surrounding routes. Number of buses also on diversion.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Oh yeah, good news for women in the Times, Krista. You no longer have to feel pressured to go into a STEM subject.
Yes. Boys performing slightly better than girls in maths and science. Why is that good news for
women? Because you could just drop the pretense anymore. You don't.
Oh,
you guys.
Honey, I've been there for a long time. This is. I don't. I'm baffled by this. A study is showing.
There's lots of statistics in the article.
I will take it if there are going to be some competent men. What they're doing here is growing some competent men for the future. Great, love it. Let's not have problematic boys going around doing knife crime. Let's have boys that like maths. Fine. But I can't understand why this has changed. So they measured it in 2019 and boys and girls were kind of neck and neck. And then more recently, boys are jumping ahead. So what's changed?
You know what? You've just proved the article, and we don't need to get into the specifics.
How rude.
There's so many graphs, so many statistics in this. It would take me too long to explain it to you guys, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I'm delighted by this because let boys have something. Let them have, you know, girls have been out before. I used to work in schools. I was a teacher, and schools are matriarchies. They can sometimes almost be toxic matriarchies, especially primary school, where boys are encouraged to sit down, colour in, be quiet, don't move around, be, you know, it's kind of feminized. And I mean, then we're always under pressure to have girls in STEM. Even as young as 5, as a teacher, I was told to intervene. When the children are playing with Lego, you'll see that the boys build a huge tower tower right up to the sky. And then the girls will just build a tiny little house and then their Barbies will play in them. Now, as a teacher, you have to go over to those little girls and tell them, would you not like Barbie to live in a skyscraper? Just, oh, come on.
that you build and design.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. Time is 4:42 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, it's travel chaos ongoing for thousands today. Britain's busiest airport, Heathrow, has shut down after a fire at a nearby electrical substation caused a mass power outage. That was the explosion on your screens there around about 11:30 p.m. last night. And that's caused their mass power outage, disrupting flights around the entire world. Well, counter-terrorism police are now leading that investigation into the fire, but it has now emerged that Heathrow says it will resume some flights later on today. So some crumbs of comfort there from the scene of what looks like a disaster zone. We can now speak with the media commentator, Paul Connew. Paul, welcome to the show. Politically, this is embarrassing for Sir Keir Starmer, isn't it? Here's a guy who earlier this week was on a nuclear submarine telling us that the RAF will be patrolling the skies above the Ukraine, keeping Vladimir Putin in his box. And now all the talk is that this may have been a terror revenge attack by Putin to embarrass the entire nation. We don't know that's for sure the case, but don't you think it would be a good idea for Sir Keir Starmer to come out and speak to us? Sadiq Khan's given us a statement. Where's the Prime Minister?
Yes, I'm surprised that we haven't heard from the Prime Minister directly on camera. But although I don't think you can particularly blame Keir Starmer for this. This is a national embarrassment. But if it's not a terror attack, and the signs are it probably isn't, although that can't be ruled out, then it becomes a massive failure of the infrastructure system and the backup. But that's going to predate the last election. This isn't a sort of current government problem. It is a long-standing problem, and but you're right. It is a national embarrassment. I mean, we've got best part of 250,000 people affected. And although they're talking about having a few flights out tonight and even talk of it being back to almost normal tomorrow, which sounds to me very optimistic, most people I know in the aircraft industry and the airline industry are talking about the middle of next week, and possibly even later before we're really back into Heathrow as we know it, as Europe's biggest hub airline.
And Paul, it also sends out the message that relatively easy to cause total chaos in Britain. One power station the size of a petrol station has taken out the entire infrastructure. The skies above Heathrow as quiet as they were during lockdowns. It's ridiculous that something so fragile can cause so much damage, and that must surely ask big questions about airport security across the entire nation.
Well, about security, it depends. I mean, if we are talking, which seems unlikely but can't be ruled out, of a terrorist attack, then obviously that raises one set of issues. If it seems more likely this is a malfunction and a failure of a backup system, and the lack of a backup system to the backup system, which many businesses would actually have an extra stage, then that begs another set of questions. There's obviously going to have to be a major investigation into this. I mean, quite apart from the immediate investigation, there's going to have to be some sort of inquiry into how this could have happened. But I think, for example, the other political parties have been rather quiet so far, because this isn't like one you can pin down on the current government. If whatever the problem is, especially if it's an infrastructure failure, it is long-standing. It's not suddenly that's happened since the last general election. So I think Keir Starmer is embarrassed and should be out facing the cameras, but you can't lay it at the door of the current government, unless there's been a security failure in terrorist terms, which, as I say, I think is probably the least likely explanation at the moment.
OK, Paul Connew, we have to leave it there. Nevertheless, you know, the government would like to portray a nation that's clear for takeoff in terms of the economy. That looks like an economy that's crash landing. The investigation will start. The questions will continue. Paul Connew, thank you very much for joining us today on GB News. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun, well, good luck with getting the flights. But here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Low pressure remains mostly in charge of Western Europe, bringing heavy showers and thunderstorms, bringing in a further risk of flooding. The odd shower across Madeira and Tenerife, but the bulk of the rain affecting Portugal and Spain, where already they have had most of the rain through the week. Still plenty of showers elsewhere across Europe, but mostly dry across parts of Greece, and remaining dry here with the best of the temperatures, but elsewhere still remaining largely showery, and this is limiting temperatures at around the mid to high teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine for many of us today, but cloudier, breezier, cooler compared with recent days, and that's because gradually we're going to see rain spread east overnight. The rain already affecting parts of the southwest and west of the UK because of this area of low pressure moving in. But elsewhere, we've got breezy and cloudy weather to end the day on Friday. Still some clear spells for Scotland, northern and eastern England. Nevertheless, it is going to turn increasingly unsettled overnight with spells of rain or showers spreading north and east across the country. Still some drier interludes, but with the cloud, with the breeze, it is going to be a mild start to the weekend with temperatures of 10 or 11 Celsius first thing Saturday. There'll also be some brightness to begin things across Wales, Western England, but a lot of cloud through Scotland and some heavy outbreaks of rain moving north. Certainly an unsettled feel to things compared with recent mornings. Northern Ireland also seeing spells of rain or showers. The wettest weather will be in the west. But across England and Wales, things are very mixed. We're going to see a mixture of cloudy spells, some sunshine coming through, but also rain moving north, whilst showers begin to emerge elsewhere. And in fact, there could be some heavy downpours developing late morning into the afternoon across parts of England and Wales, particularly through central areas, Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia, but just about anywhere could see one of these slow-moving heavy downpours. They'll be hit and miss, though. Some sunshine in between. Still feeling warm in that sunshine in the south, but considerably cooler across Scotland and Northern Ireland, where we do have those spells of rain lingering. Saturday night then sees further rain or showers spread slowly northwards across the country, and the focus by Sunday is across eastern parts with some rain or showers. Monday and Tuesday a little quieter, still some showers around, but for many places it will be turning drier.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
It's a good point. He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 5 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Let's get back now, of course, to the travel chaos for thousands today. The only story in town. Britain's busiest airport, Heathrow, was shut down late last night after a fire, as you can see on your screens, at a nearby electrical substation. It caused a mass power outage, disrupting flights around the entire world. And the impact has been felt across the rest of the other major UK airports, of course, as they try and mop up the mess less calls at Heathrow. And GB News' Scotland reporter Tony Maguire has the latest from Glasgow Airport. Tony, welcome to the show. Glasgow, one of the airports trying to soak up the excess, trying to get people moving again. What's the picture there?
Yeah, that's right, Martin. Good afternoon. Certainly people here hoping to soak up the sun, and instead they find the airport soaking up all that extra mess from Heathrow. Now, certainly Glasgow stepped up quite early on today and started to play its part and welcomed those aircrafts diverted away from Heathrow towards the tarmac here in Glasgow. So much so, in fact, that at one point the airport was at capacity at the gates. The tarmac could welcome no more planes, and indeed someone from the airport told me that we needed to get more of those planes in the air to start getting that cycle moving again. And indeed, you know, we're hearing now that some of those flights may indeed even take off from Heathrow tonight, with a focus on repatriating people from across the pond and from further on afield. Now, interestingly, a lot of the people I spoke to today were at the tail end of an extremely long journey. One woman came in from New York, and before that was over in Orlando, and she was here for 7 hours trying to wait and get some kind of plan sorted for getting her back down to London. Later on, we spoke to someone who left, I guess, yesterday morning, she came from the Philippines, and she joined people who came from Australia. You can only imagine how much their journey was. But of course, you know, I'm a lover of silver linings. You know, she told me about all the camaraderie, the sharing of phone chargers, and all the things that helped them just get through the worst of it. And you know, that seems to be the case for a lot of travellers. Of course, not a lot of them very happy, a lot of them feeling the start of the holiday or in the end of it was ruined. But this was definitely, you know, one of these occasions where Glasgow Airport, and let's just say all of the other mid-sized airports around the UK, all stepped up here. This was a day to remember for Glasgow's airports.
Tony Maguire, thank you very, very much for bringing us up to speed there at Glasgow. And we have a breaking news line in these last few minutes. Heathrow is to start its first flights, 8 long-haul flights to depart from Heathrow later today, given clearance 8 flights from around about 7 p.m. this evening. Check if it's one of yours. Good luck getting through. I'm being contacted by GB News viewers stranded in America who can't get through to their airline. It's a developing story. We'll bring you all the latest in the next hour. The flights slowly starting to take off, but the investigation begins at Heathrow. Who done it and why? That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's news channel. And now it's your weather with Aidan McGibbon.
Even though we'll see a cloudy start, it'll be a bright outlook for the rest of the day. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine for many of us today, but cloudier, breezier, cooler compared with recent days, and that's because gradually we're going to see rain spread east overnight. The rain already affecting parts of the southwest and west of the UK because of this area of low pressure moving in. But elsewhere, we've got breezy and cloudy weather to end the day on Friday. Still some clear spells for Scotland, northern and eastern England. Nevertheless, it is going to turn increasingly unsettled overnight with spells of rain or showers spreading north and east across the country. Still some drier interludes, but with the cloud, with the breeze, it is going to be a mild start to the weekend with temperatures of 10 or 11 Celsius first thing Saturday. There'll also be some brightness to begin things across Wales, Western England, but a lot of cloud through Scotland and some heavy outbreaks of rain moving north. Certainly an unsettled feel to things compared with recent mornings. Northern Ireland also seeing spells of rain or showers. The wettest weather will be in the west. But across England and Wales, things are very mixed. We're going to see a mixture of cloudy spells, some sunshine coming through, but also rain moving north, whilst showers begin to emerge elsewhere. And in fact, there could be some heavy downpours developing late morning into the afternoon across parts of England and Wales, particularly through central areas, Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia, but just about anywhere could see one of these slow-moving heavy downpours. They'll be hit and miss, though, some sunshine in between, still feeling warm in that sunshine in the south, but considerably cooler across Scotland and Northern Ireland, where we do have those spells of rain lingering. Saturday night then sees further rain or showers spread slowly northwards across the country, and the focus by Sunday is across eastern parts with some rain or showers. Monday and Tuesday a little quieter, still some showers around, but for many places it will be turning drier.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Merseyside, the M6 northbound is partly blocked after a collision. It's happened near junction 23 for Haydock and the A580 turn-off. In Manchester, the M62 westbound is partly blocked for repairs after a collision earlier. That's between junction 12 for the M60 and junction 11 for Birchwood. In Hertfordshire, delays building on the clockwise M25 in the roadworks from junction 22 at St Albans to 23 for the A1M at South Mimms.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
We're giving you the chance to splash out this season with an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash. Jet off on your dream holiday, treat yourself to something special, or just save it for a rainy day. You'll also receive 2 brand new designer watches and a Mulberry handbag, so you can really look the part this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very, very good afternoon to you on this Friday afternoon. It's 5 p.m. Welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're broadcasting for you live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. It's still chaos at Heathrow Airport after a fire at a nearby electrical substation that supplies Europe's busiest airport with power that caused it to be shut down, causing misery for thousands and thousands of passengers. And to make things worse, counter-terrorism police have announced that they are now leading the investigation into the fire. Could Russian sabotage be the reason for the chaos? We'll be bringing you all the very latest on this story throughout the show. Welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have your company. We're being contacted here at GB News by passengers stranded in America who can't get through to their airlines. Bedlam on the ground as firefighters struggle to get that plant cooled down enough to start investigating. Could it have been an external agent that wanted to cause reputational damage or physical damage to the airport? Some reports also saying it's simply an old oil-filled transformer, may have overheated and caused it, which would be a hugely embarrassing situation to an airport where the failure of just one substation has grounded the entire country. The skies above Heathrow as silent as during COVID lockdowns, as silent as when the volcano erupted over Iceland a few years back. How can something so simple cause so much chaos? Who done it? Why did they do it? What's happening next? That's the beginnings of a huge investigation, and we'll bring you all the latest as in this past few moments has been announced. Some flights will now resume around about 7 p.m. this evening, but only a very, very small number of flights. The investigation will roll on. So stick with us, get in touch if you're stranded, if you want to let us know your frustrations. The way to do that is gbnews.com/you'll say. But now it's your headlines, and here's Sophia Wensler.
Martin, thank you. It's just gone 5 o'clock. These are your headlines. Now, as you've been hearing, British Airways has been given clearance for 8 long-haul flights to depart the airport today from 7 p.m. Earlier, the airport announced it is able to restart flights and that it hopes to run a full service from tomorrow. It's after a fire at a nearby electrical substation forced Europe's busiest airport into shutdown today. More than 1,300 flights have been cancelled or diverted, affecting over 200,000 passengers and leaving planes and crews in the wrong locations. Counter-terrorism police are now leading an investigation into the blaze, though they say there's no indication of foul play. The airport says disruption could still last for days and passengers shouldn't travel to Heathrow until further notice. Meanwhile, Mayor Sadiq Khan says it's not a surprise that counter-terrorism police are involved.
So when these sorts of incidents occur of this seriousness, they're often declared a major incident. This was declared a major incident last night for obvious reasons, proximity to Heathrow Airport and so forth. The fire service, the fire brigade, has a chief investigator on the scene. They've been there since early this morning. They work really closely with the Met Police Service. The Met Police Service bring in specialist expertise as and when, clearly because of the proximity of the substation to the airport. It's not a surprise the counter-terror team's been involved. The Met Police Service, the Fire Brigade, will make sure that the public know whenever there's any information to pass on to the public, but there's no reason at all to suspect foul play at the moment.
In other news, Donald Trump has awarded Boeing with a new F-47 fighter jet contract.
At my direction, the United States Air Force is moving forward with the world's first 6th-generation fighter jet. Number 6, 6th generation. Nothing in the world comes even close to it. After a rigorous and thorough competition between some of America's top aerospace companies, the Air Force is going to be awarding the contract for the next generation air dominance platform to Boeing.
Speaking live from the Oval Office, the US President announced a new 6th generation fighter jet for the US Air Force would be developed by the struggling company. For Boeing, the win marks a reversal of fortune for a company that has suffered on both the commercial and defence sides of its business following a string of safety issues. Now, back in the UK, 3 teenage boys have been charged with the rape of a girl under the age of 16. The incident happened on the 10th of February last year in Rochdale. That's according to Greater Manchester Police. The force said each of the boys, aged 13, 14 and 15, have been charged with 1 count of rape of a female under 16. In other news, a man who took a bomb into a Leeds hospital intending to kill as many nurses as possible has been jailed for life. Mohammed Farouk has been jailed at Sheffield Crown Court for a minimum term of 37 years. Farouk, who was a trainee nurse, was last year found guilty of attempting to launch an IS-inspired suicide attack using a homemade bomb on the hospital where he worked in 2023. Tommy Robinson has lost a High Court bid to challenge his segregation in prison over fears he'd be killed by another inmate. He was moved to a closed wing at Woodhill after intelligence suggested a prisoner serving life was planning to attack him. His lawyers argued his isolation breaches human rights and is harming his mental health. But the court heard he enjoys various privileges behind bars and has no arguable claim. And the government borrowing jumped to $10.7 billion in February, far higher than forecast, piling pressure on Rachel Reeves ahead of her spring statement next week. The Chancellor is expected to announce more spending cuts to meet her strict borrowing rules, with economists warning her fiscal buffer has now been wiped out. Plans already include a £5 billion shake-up of the benefit system and freezing incapacity payments until 2030. Despite the cuts, defence spending will rise, funded by slashing the international aid budget. Critics say Reeves has boxed herself in and warn the economy could take another hit. Those are the latest GB News headlines. More in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
And here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2896 and €1.1929. The price of gold is £2,336 and 31 pence per ounce. And the FTSE 100's at 8,651 points.
My Claim Group sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Thank you, Sophia. Now, in these past few moments, we've learned there's been some sweet relief, at least for some passengers, because British Airways' first flights will now take off after 7 p.m. this evening. And the airport has been closed all day due to fire at a local power station. In a statement from Sean Doyle, the CEO and chairman of British Airways, he had this to say.
This is an unprecedented situation, and we have not seen a closure of Heathrow on this scale for many years. Unfortunately, it will have a huge impact on all of our customers flying with us over the coming days. Our colleagues are working extremely hard to support our customers with the most up-to-date information in a live and evolving situation.
Well, things are crawling back to some semblance of normality. And we're live across the country, bringing you all of the latest on the ground. And Mark White is in West London for us, and Steve Bennett is outside Heathrow Airport. Steve, let's get to the scene of the crime, as it were. You're there on the ground at Heathrow, and the skies above you, well, they seem to be completely and utterly empty.
Martin, that's right. They are empty for now, but as you said, from about 7 p.m. tonight, British Airways have got permission to start flying some long-haul flights again. 8 of those have permission to continue again. And in the last few minutes, actually, we saw some of the runway lights behind us come on. They've gone off again, but they were on shortly here. This is Terminal 4 behind me, which was the first terminal to get power back earlier on. We reported that, how the car parks, the lifts were running again and the lights were back on in Terminal 4, but it has been chaotic for passengers here in West London today. Normally, 250,000 passengers pass through this airport, but that hasn't happened today, and the scenes for many passengers have been stressful. They've been left stranded all over the world, and we had reports of 120 flights that were on their way to London Heathrow, only to be told, don't bother, we are shut. They either had to return back to their home base or they had to be relocated to another airport somewhere in Europe. And that's also part of the problem, that even if Heathrow opens up again tomorrow, which they're saying it likely will do, it will take days for the backlog, because as you mentioned there, the planes are scattered all over the globe, as are the passengers, as are the staff. So we saw some air stewardesses, some air stewards earlier going back to their hotel because they've got nowhere to travel to today because their flights are grounded. So it will be a relief when we see planes start taking off in a few hours behind us here at Terminal 4, and as things start to get back to normal.
Steve Bennett, a lone pigeon just flew in the airspace of Heathrow. That's the only thing in the air at the moment, a pigeon. Let's head now to Mark White in West London for us. Mark White, reputationally, operationally, politically, a huge embarrassment for the United Kingdom that our biggest airport is taken down by what looks like a single generator conking out or being interfered with in some way. When we last spoke, Mark White, you told us they were trying to get that situation under control so the investigation could begin. What's the latest?
Well, it's under control, certainly, but it's not out. Just glanced behind me a couple of seconds ago, and I could still see smoke billowing up from behind, from the location where that transformer was, where the explosion took place at 11:30 last night. And just a couple of hours ago, we had a change of crews for the London Fire Brigade, with several more fire engines arriving here to continue what is, of course, a protracted operation. But what it means in terms of continuing to have to dampen down the scene and to put those final flames and hot spots out is that the counter-terrorism detectives and fire investigators can't get close enough into the scene to do a proper examination there, to try to determine whether there may have been some outside source of ignition here. One of the things they will be looking at, of course, is whether this may have been some kind of sabotage. Now, they're saying at this stage they've found nothing that points to foul play, but quite honestly, as I said, they've not been able to get close enough to make that determination properly. And once it's cooled down, they will be able in short order, I think, to either rule in or rule out third-party involvement in what has happened here. But regardless of whether there was a more sinister motive to what happened last night or not, it's deeply embarrassing, there is no doubt, for this country's resilience and critical infrastructure when you see a hub airport like Heathrow Airport, a hub internationally for so many flights coming to head wherever else around the world, that gets shut down by admittedly a major substation, but a substation no less that's been taken out. There doesn't appear to have been the proper resilience in place to switch to other backup generators in the first instance, and then to reroute in short order other power supplies to these terminal buildings at Heathrow. And that will, going forward, obviously be uppermost in the minds of government. The Transport Secretary and the Prime Minister will want to know what on earth has gone wrong. As yet, Heathrow Airport PLC has not really come up with anything other than to say that, you know, they did have backup power to some of the critical areas such as air traffic control at Heathrow Airport.
And isn't that the point, Mark White? We have a Prime Minister who this week was on a nuclear submarine saying the RAF will dominate the skies above Ukraine in any potential peace deal. And now this is hugely embarrassing. We can't get a single flight off the ground. And yet Sir Keir Starmer has been notable today, Mark White, by his complete absence. No appearance before the media. Do you think that's a poor choice? Should the Prime Minister come and tell the country what's going on?
Well, I mean, he did send out a message from Downing Street in the form of social media post earlier, but yes, you're right, he didn't appear in front of the cameras. I mean, I was actually up in Cumbria at the Barrow shipyard, the submarine yard, where the Prime Minister was yesterday, laying the keel for the keel laying ceremony for the new generation of ballistic missile submarines, you know, with warnings to Russia that Britain had a very capable and potent defence system in the form of the current ballistic missile submarines and the new generation to come on board. Now look, you know, some people are speculating that this may have been Russia. In the end, maybe, maybe not. You know, who knows until Counter-Terrorism Command come back and tell us for sure what has happened here. But regardless of whether there was any third-party involvement, the fact that we are seeing the collapse of the infrastructure around such a major transportation hub shows those that may be adversaries, that may want to cause us harm, that can be done. You know, that the critical national infrastructure isn't as resilient as it should be and as the planners would want it to be.
Okay, Mark White, excellent summary there. Thank you very, very much. And Steve Bennett, thank you for bringing us up to speed of what's happening there at Heathrow Airport. And keep an eye out for those low-flying pigeons. For now, that's all that seems to be in the air. Gentlemen, thank you very, very much indeed. Now, let's continue this conversation now, because I'll speak with the Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, Dr. Alan Mendoza. Dr. Mendoza, thank you for waiting patiently. Mark White there, I think, absolutely nailed it. However this happened, it's a massive, massive embarrassment that a single substation going to meltdown can cause this much chaos. Dr. Mendoza, if you organise a school disco, you have a backup generator to make sure the show can go on. Isn't this operationally and reputationally a massive, massive embarrassment?
Well, yes, of course it is. And your comment about the backup generator is all well and good. The backup generator has to be on a different system to the main generator, else you've got a massive problem. What appears to have happened here, although it's a little unclear still, is that the backup system got taken out by the same problem as the frontline system. And that's really basic, sort of 101 on this sort of thing. And it makes you wonder how many other sites of key critical national infrastructure are, sort of in a similar position. What this shows is indeed that we have been far too careless about this sort of aspect of defence, and we need to shape up pretty quickly and understand what is going on in other places to prevent this happening again.
You're absolutely right, and we've seen Just Stop Oil protesters simply clipping chicken wire and getting onto airport runways at Stansted. This incident here, however it happened, it may have been an old generator conking out. We're hearing reports of a very old oil-filled transformer running over capacity, something that had been highlighted a number of years ago by the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan. Of course, we have the more fantastical events, perhaps, of foreign intervention from Vladimir Putin. But it just sends out the message, does it not, that we're not serious about protecting our infrastructure. We're not serious about projecting power on the world stage in a week, Dr. Mendoza, where you've got the Prime Minister on a nuclear submarine promising to take over the skies over Ukraine.
Well, it's unfortunately the case, isn't it, that all the chickens are coming home to roost. And look, this is not this government's fault alone. Previous governments have also failed to invest. I mean, this is obviously a long-term problem, as you've just suggested. So the problem here is that we've all woken up to the realities now that the holiday from history we enjoyed from the 1990s to roughly the middle of last decade is over. We only realised a decade on that it's over, but it's all coming very quickly, and we've seen the effects of that in terms of defence spending, the need to spend more, and clearly we're not spending anywhere near enough, even with the 2.5% that we've gone up to. And now we're seeing with this particular incident, whether it is an accident as is likely or a sabotage in the worst case, doesn't matter either way. What it shows is the weakness of our critical national infrastructure, and that it can be overturned very, very quickly indeed. So there is clearly a wake-up call here today to the government to say, regardless of what's happened in the past, you're in control of the situation now. A national audit needs to take place of similar areas to make sure that we don't have similar problems in the future.
I think you're absolutely right. And just to bring you a breaking news line now, the CEO of Heathrow Airport is expected to give a statement shortly to fill us in with the latest information. Of course, we're bringing that live as it happens. Until then, thank you very much for joining us. That's the Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, Dr. Alan Mendoza. Thank you very much. And also the breaking news line. We are now expecting 8 flights, only 8 flights, perhaps as soon as 7 p.m. to commence getting back in the air. That statement from the CEO of Heathrow Airport expected shortly. And of course, we're bringing that live on GB News as that happens. Keep you right up to date on the ongoing chaos at Heathrow, and we're discussing also the government's response to the ongoing speculation about potential Russian involvement. Did Putin get involved, and why would he do that? That's next with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News, Britain's News Channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
please bring us up to date,
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The royal family is an enduring symbol of tradition, unity and pride for Britain. At GB News, we celebrate what makes this country great. In our new royal newsletter series, you can join me, Cameron Walker, for Inside the Palace, an exclusive look every week that takes you beyond the gates and brings you the very latest from those at the heart of the monarchy. Never miss a royal moment again. Sign up now. Go to gbnews.com/royal newsletter and get the latest straight to your inbox.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. Your time is 5:23 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, returning to today's leading story, London's Heathrow Airport, of course, has been brought to a dramatic halt today due to an electrical substation fire that broke out at ground level at 11:30 p.m. last night. And we're expecting British Airways' first flights will take off after 7 p.m. this evening. We believe around about 8 flights due to take off, long-haul flights. And shortly, we'll be hearing from the CEO of Heathrow Airport for a full update. But ahead of that, we can now speak with the independent energy consultant, Catherine Porter. Catherine, welcome to the show. A huge amount of questions being asked. Who done it? Why would they do it? Could be just an old transformer has conked out. It could be an external influence who wished us harm. But irrespective of how it started, the chain reaction of one substation breaking down like this and leading to absolute bedlam, the skies as empty as during COVID, is a massive, massive PR disaster for the airport and for the supply of power. Tell us more.
Well, it's also a huge economic problem. It's going to cost quite a lot of money to put this right. It's hard to say what caused it. There was a similar incident in 2013 in Aldgate, which affected the London Underground and some local homes and businesses, and that was down to a faulty wire that caused a fire. There are 3 transformers at this substation. One has been completely destroyed, one which is very close to it.
OK, I'm afraid we have to interrupt because we're crossing now to the Heathrow Airport CEO for that station.
This evening, we're due to fly, probably won't be delayed too much. Is that right?
We talk about very few aircraft tonight, so I don't think that is a major issue. That is a few flights to make sure that we have operations in place for tomorrow morning.
For tomorrow, again, what's the picture going to be, and who can expect to be flying?
Tomorrow morning, we expect to be back in full operation, so 100% operation as a normal day.
So people who are booked for tomorrow morning can expect to fly normally, and what should they do?
They should come to the airport as they normally would. There's no reason to come earlier. They should be coming to the airport as they were planning to do otherwise.
How would you sum up what's happened today, just in terms of the operation of this airport?
First of all, what I'd like to do is to apologize to the many people who have had their travel affected during the day today. We are very sorry about all the inconvenience. I also like to thank the many people who have been part of bringing the airport back into operation. That is fire services, authorities, our airlines, handlers, and our own colleagues who've done an enormous work to get back into operation. What happened around midnight last night was obviously that we lost a major part of our power supply, and I like to stress that this has been an incident of major severity. It's not a small fire. We have lost power equal to that of a mid-sized city, and our backup systems have been working as they should, but they are not sized to run the entire airport.
I'll come back to that in a second, but I wanted to ask, I can't remember in a long history of covering this airport a time like this, a day like this. How would you put what's happened today in context?
This is unprecedented. It's never happened before, and that's why I'm saying it has been a major incident. Of course, everybody has been shocked, but all our procedures have been working the way they should. I hope people appreciate that we do not close down the airport unless we have severe safety concerns. That's why we do it, and that's what has happened today. We've been working tirelessly to get the operation back into running, and that's what's now happening.
So let's look at the power failure. What were you told, and when were you told what had happened?
Very early during the night, obviously, as soon as we realized the magnitude of this, and then all our procedures went into force, and we've been working ever since. First to reallocate our power supply, that means closing down all our systems and then restarting all these systems in a safe way, which takes a long time.
So when did you decide to close the airport? How difficult a decision was that?
That was a very difficult decision, and we took that quite early when we could see that we could not safely operate the airport, and that is our concern number one, is the safety of our passengers and our colleagues. When we realize that that is not possible with that major power loss that we have had, we have to close the airport.
Because I suppose that's the key question, isn't it? A single power failure has closed down a major airport on which this country's economy depends, and you knew straight away you had to do it. That does suggest that this is a bit of a weak point.
Well, you can say that, but of course, contingencies of certain sizes, we cannot guard ourselves against 100%, and this is one of them. This has been a major incident. I mean, short of anybody getting hurt, this is as big as it gets for our airport, and we are actually coming back quite fast, I would say, when you consider the amount of systems that we have to shut down, then bring back up and make sure that they're safe. It's fueling systems, it's bridges, it's escalators, elevators, all of these systems have to be brought back up, tested to make sure they're safe and put into operation.
And a lot of people are asking another question, which is about backup supplies. What backup supplies were there, and why were they not capable of keeping the airport open?
Well, there are backup supplies. We have 3 of these substations. Each of them has a backup transformer. The backup transformer in this case also went. And then we have to restructure the supply. So we're not out of power, but we have to restructure our power supply. To do that, we have to close down systems. That is safety procedures. We cannot go around that. When we do that, and we did that during night, we got our power back in the morning, we then start to safely restart the airport. That is a major operation. We're talking thousands of systems that have to be restarted and tested before we can safely open the airport, and that just takes time.
And just help me understand what you mean by restructure the supply. So you're talking about switching the supply to different places?
Yes, when you have 3 incoming inlets, as we have, of major size as these 3 are, when one goes down and the backup as well goes down, we have to make sure that the entire airport gets supply, and for that we need to sort of switch some wires, if you like. That happens via computers, but nonetheless, and that takes some time, and it requires, as I said, closing down systems and then restarting those systems.
So I think you said you'd lost the main supply and the backup supply. Were they in the same place?
Well, that's for this particular substation. We have 3 of those, so 2 of them were not lost, but each of them have the backup supply. And yes, the backup transformer for this supply was also lost.
But that does suggest that the two other power stations weren't able to keep the airport open.
They can actually, but that requires restructuring of the power supply, and that requires taking the systems down. So yes, we can run on the two.
So what lessons are you learning from this, and what changes will you make?
That is something we'll look back on when we are through today's operation. But of course, we'll look at anything we can learn from this. But I should say, our backup systems have worked the way they should. Our crisis management has worked the way it should. But this just takes time when we have an incident of this major severity.
And this is very good, very useful detail. I just want to understand. So when you say you presumably lost some of the power, so not enough to keep the airport open, but there was some power.
We lost a major part of our power. 1 out of 3 substations. 2 substations can run the airport, but we need to re-engineer the structure of the power supply for all the terminals, and that's what we were doing during the day. And then we have to restart all the systems, and that's what we've done, and we now see operation coming back.
The Prime Minister has said that he'll be asking questions of you about why this has happened and what can be done to prevent it. What will your answers be?
We will come back to that when we have a look back at this. But as I said, our procedures have worked the way they should. This takes time, and of course the Prime Minister should ask his questions, and we'll be happy to answer them.
And the Director General of IATA, the airline industry group, has said that it's not good enough, that they have been let down again, and he used the word, I think, again, by this airport. What would you say to airlines, your customers?
What I'm saying to the customers, of course, is that we are sorry for the incident. It was caused by what is outside factors. I think the statements are made without much detail of what's actually happening and the understanding of the severity of this incident.
And who, in the end, it's a complicated business, will pay for this?
Well, there are procedures in place for that. Who pays for that? And those procedures will be followed, and that is airlines for passengers and so forth.
But as a business, do you anticipate this being a major liability for you?
That's not how the structure works, and we don't have liabilities in place for incidents like this.
Okay, I think that siren was asking us to stop. So, thank you very much. That's very, very, very good. There's no cutaway because it's a pool, so yeah. So we can let you go if that's all right. Yeah.
OK, that was Thomas Waldby. He's the CEO of Heathrow Airport, putting on a brave face, it has to be said. He said very few aircraft will get off the ground tonight, but come to the airport tomorrow as normal. He said, I'd like to apologise. I'm very sorry for the inconvenience, which is putting it mildly. He did say he was sorry a few times. He underlined the fact that the power lost was equal to a mid-sized city. The power needed by Heathrow is a huge amount. He called it unprecedented. We shut down due to a severe safety concern. He said that paramount was passenger safety, and until that could be certain, they shut down. It was a very difficult decision, he said, to shut down the entire airport, but we had to do it. When he was asked if this was a weak point, the fact that this one little meltdown knocked out the entire system, he said this has been a major incident, and short of nobody getting hurt, this is as big as it gets, he said. He was asked repeatedly about the backup supply. He said there were 3 generators, each with their own backup, and yet, when one of them went down, they had to restart thousands of systems, which meant the entire airport went offline. He said that takes time. Well, it took from midnight tonight until now. So it's taken hours and hours and hours. He said that the generators left could power the airport, but there was no configuration to do so. The plot thickens. He said, our procedures worked. Well, I think thousands of people around the world stranded may disagree. Let's get back now to Catherine Porter, the independent energy consultant who's been waiting patiently in the wings, pun intended. Catherine Porter, what do you make of that statement? Was that satisfying? It seems to me he was saying, don't worry about it, the plan went according to plan.
Yeah, I mean, I totally disagree. I mean, first of all, they don't have different sources of generation in that sense. They were substations. So one substation failed. It took out a secondary substation on Heathrow's side, but the other 2 substations remained, but they need to reconfigure to run the site. Now, there are data centres in the area that have similar load to Heathrow, which managed to run through these faults without any trouble, and that's because they have large diesel generators on site that can actually maintain their sites for 2 days, 48 hours of continuous running at full load. So there's a very good question as to why Heathrow doesn't have that. It has a 10 megawatt biomass plant on site that normally fuels, powers terminals 2 and 5. But that's not enough to do the whole airport. And it has a little bit of diesel on site to run things like runway lights, because if a power cut happens, you need time to divert planes. If there's a plane coming in, you don't want it to be in trouble because all of the lights suddenly go off. But it's just inadequate to not be able to maintain the site when one of your substations goes off. They should have more on-site generation. They should have diesel backup that can power the airport in the same way that these data centres do. And I think Heathrow really needs to answer some difficult questions around this.
And Catherine Porter, the notion that the CEO there, Thomas Wolby, said, oh no, we did have the power, but we just had to shut everything down to reconfigure the systems. There are thousands of systems, he said, from the lifts to the power supply. That takes time. And again, he was smiling away with total conviction. But were you convinced that that was an adequate explanation? One substation goes into meltdown and the entire world is talking about the fact that, it seems like we couldn't even organise a meat raffle, let alone, run the busiest airport in Western Europe.
So what he's saying might be true, but that just might be saying that they have a really, really bad setup and they need to revisit their operations. When you have backup systems, the whole point about them is that you can cut over quickly. If it takes you the best part of a day to cut over, then that's not really providing what most people would consider to be a proper backup. And so it's just not a satisfactory answer. Whether you have the power there or not is not really the point. People care about whether that power can be delivered and used to provide the services. And obviously, in this case, it couldn't.
And I wonder if that question he was asked there finally, who will pay for this? And the CEO seemed to blanch. Didn't have an answer. A lot of people were sat around desperate to get flights saying, well, who is going to pay for this? Catherine Porter, we have to leave it there. Thank you very much for patiently waiting and giving us your expertise. Much, much appreciated. Thank you very much indeed. Now, there's plenty more to come throughout the rest of the show. But for now, if you're travelling home from work or from school, here is your traffic and travel update. And don't forget to stay with us on digital and on radio.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Alan Wright. In Merseyside, the M6 northbound is partly blocked by a breakdown. It's just after junction 23 for Haydock and the A580 turn-off. In Gloucestershire, the M5 southbound is partly blocked after a collision. That's happened between junction 17 for Cribbs Causeway and 18 for the M49. And near Bristol, the M4 westbound is queuing after a collision earlier near junction 19 for Bristol and the M32 turn-off.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
Again, and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine for many of us today, but cloudier, breezier, cooler compared with recent days, and that's because gradually we're going to see rain spread east overnight. The rain already affecting parts of the southwest and west of the UK because of this area of low pressure moving in. But elsewhere, we've got breezy and cloudy weather to end the day on Friday. Still some clear spells for Scotland, northern and eastern England. Nevertheless, it is going to turn increasingly unsettled overnight with spells of rain or showers spreading north and east across the country. Still some drier interludes, but with the cloud, with the breeze, it is going to be a mild start to the weekend with temperatures of 10 or 11 Celsius first thing Saturday. There'll also be some brightness to begin things across Wales, Western England, but a lot of cloud through Scotland and some heavy outbreaks of rain moving north. Certainly an unsettled feel to things compared with recent mornings. Northern Ireland also seeing spells of rain or showers. The wettest weather will be in the west. But across England and Wales, things are very mixed. We're going to see a mixture of cloudy spells, some sunshine coming through, but also rain moving north, whilst showers begin to emerge
elsewhere. And in fact, there could be some heavy downpours developing late morning into the afternoon across parts of England and Wales, particularly through central areas, Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia, but just about anywhere could see one of these slow-moving heavy downpours. They'll be hit and miss though, some sunshine in between, still feeling warm in that sunshine in the south, but considerably cooler across Scotland and Northern Ireland, where we do have those spells of rain lingering. Saturday night then sees further rain or showers spread slowly northwards across the country, and the focus by Sunday is across eastern parts with some rain or showers. Monday and Tuesday a little quieter, still some showers around, but for many places it will be turning drier.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point.
He's lying. Maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 26 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, let's return now to the huge story of the day, and that, of course, is the huge travel chaos for thousands at Britain's busiest airports. Heathrow shut down all day until British Airways' first flights, we believe, will now take off around about 7 p.m. this evening. 8 flights, we're told, may get off the ground, and counter-terrorism police are now leading the investigation into that fire. We can now speak with the former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office, Chris Phillips. Chris, welcome to the show. So the investigation is just beginning, really. They're still trying to get that blaze finally under control enough to safely get access to that site to begin the meticulous forensic analysis of what may or may not have happened. With your extensive expertise, the knowledge and the data in front of you, what do you think are the most likely theories?
Well, I think there's a number of theories. Either something's just gone wrong, and Sod's Law tells us that happens all the time, so that could be the case. But it could also be some form of criminality, as in people trying to steal wire. I know it sounds stupid, but it does happen in these kind of sites. And then it could be a deliberate act. And there are any number of people or groups that would be interested in doing that. And of course, terrorism police are there because of that possibility. And it is a big possibility because we've seen these types of sites being attacked by terrorists before.
And Chris Phillips, do you think we take airport security anywhere near, seriously enough? For example, we've seen Just Stop Oil miscreants rolling under the chicken wire at Stansted. It's easy, is it not, to get a drone up above airports. We've seen drone attacks on airports. We saw previously British airports closed down because of drones going up. And here we are once again, Chris Phillips, the only thing flying above Heathrow are a few pigeons.
Yeah, exactly. And I've been talking about drone and security against drones for many years. You know, we put our security fences up at 10 foot high, perhaps, and a drone just goes over the top of that, and it's not beyond the wit of anyone, particularly terrorists or criminals, to use drones to deliver explosives. So these things are possibilities. That's what the police counterterrorism unit will be looking into. We do have to look at a whole new world of, our critical national infrastructure. This is one of those key sites. You know, it costs billions of pounds if you lose Heathrow for any period of the day. And that's what's happened here. So they will be very keen to find out exactly what's gone on. It could be even a cyber attack. We don't know. So these things need to be investigated, and that's what they're doing at this moment.
Now, Chris Phillips, you don't have to be a criminal mastermind the likes of Professor Moriarty to watch all of this bedlam today and think, ooh, it's a piece of cake. to bring Britain to its knees. It's a piece of cake to make the skies as empty as they were during COVID lockdowns. All you got to do is knock out a substation at an airport. It seems astonishingly fragile that it takes such a tiny, piece of the chain to fall apart for the whole thing to come down collapsing.
Yeah, it's one of those key points of failure. I'm surprised, actually, because in the late 90s, we had substations were attacked by the IRA, and the intention was there to bring London to a halt and no electricity in London for 3 to 6 months. These substations, they're not built quickly. They are huge, massive bits of kit that have to be individually bespokely made for a site. So it'll take a long time to get this thing back and running. In the meantime, they've got to find a way of giving it another method of getting the power into that site. These have always been the problems. If you look at Ukraine now, Martin, the power sites, the substations, are all those that are being attacked because they know that's what you do if you're going to try to invade a country. So you do need to put in some extra measures of security, but also, if you lose it, the ability to go around it.
And Chris Phillips, finally, in the week where we saw Sir Keir Starmer aboard a nuclear submarine, the week where the Prime Minister was saying the RAF will rule the skies above Ukraine in the event of a future peace deal, what does today send out as a message of projecting power onto the world stage?
Well, it can happen anywhere, Martin, to be fair. This is one of those things that I don't know how this has happened. The most disappointing thing for me, you can always attack these types of sites. The most disappointing thing for me is that they weren't able to work around it, and they had no backup plan, by the looks of it, that would have given them the ability to carry on business as usual. And that's the worrying thing.
Thank you, Chris Phillips. We have to leave it there. We're running out of time. Thank you very much, my friend. Always a pleasure. Now, moving on, if you're in search of some winter sun this year, well, first of all, good luck getting a flight. But here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean all clear skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Low pressure remains mostly in charge of Western Europe, bringing heavy showers and thunderstorms, bringing in a further risk of flooding. The odd shower across Madeira and Tenerife, but the bulk of the rain affecting Portugal and Spain, where already they have had most of the rain through the week. Still plenty of showers elsewhere across Europe, and mostly dry across parts of Greece, and remaining dry here with the best of the temperatures, but elsewhere still remaining largely showery, and this is limiting temperatures at around the mid to high teens.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
The latest GB News Travel.
Good afternoon, I'm Johnny Ratner. Well, Heathrow Airport remains closed, as we've been hearing, following this fire at the nearby substation. It also means that Elizabeth Line and Heathrow Express services are suspended to the airport heading out of the capital and on the roads. As a result, the M4 Heathrow Spur is closed towards the airport from the main carriageway of the M4. Staying with the roads on the M6 in Greater Manchester, the inside lanes closed northbound junction 24 to 25 from Ashton and Makerfield to Bryn after a lorry broke down, causing long queues. And that's the very latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Crash Law 24 sponsors GB News Traffic and Travel Report.
You could be the next big winner of the Great British Giveaway, as we have an incredible £17,777 in tax-free cash to be won. Cash that you'll be able to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we'll also give you the latest Mulberry handbag, and not one, but 2 sought-after designer watches, so you can style it out this spring. For another chance to win the lot, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Welcome back. It's 9 minutes before 6 with me, Martin Daubney, on GB News. Let's return now to the huge story of the day, and that is, of course, travel chaos for thousands today. As Britain's busiest airport, Heathrow, has been shut down all day until the first flights, we believe, may now take off around about 7 p.m. this evening. 8 long-haul flights, we believe, should finally get in the air. Now, counter-terrorism police are now leading the investigation into the fire, and let's talk now with the political advisor, Pablo Ohana. Pablo, welcome to the show. It's fascinating how the default position now seems to be, it must have been Vladimir Putin, even if it wasn't. And a while ago, Donald Trump was saying Russia is all a hoax, but it's a huge situation where everything on the planet now, Russia is the default whodunit.
Well, yeah, and I think it underscores that UK national security is intrinsically tied to Ukraine's victory. If Russia is behind the Heathrow shutdown, it really does underscore the urgency. More aid, more military support, troops on the ground, planes in the air, tanks rolling forward. We have to make sure Putin loses, and decisively. And Trump needs to decide which side of history he's on here, because if Russia is behind this, this is the most extraordinary violation of national security for the United Kingdom.
Yeah, and it may not be the case. That investigation is ongoing. They're still putting the fire out there. Pablo Ohana, we have to leave it there. Thank you for patiently waiting. It's been a very busy day, as you can imagine. Just want to finish the show now before I hand over to Michelle Dewberry by pointing out what I thought was an astonishing statement from the chief executive of Heathrow Airport, Thomas Wolby, in this past 45 minutes, spoke, and he said, "Our procedures worked." He said, "Our procedures worked. We had 3 generators, each with backup, but unfortunately we had to shut down the entire airport to restart our systems. It was all about safety." How do you feel at the end of that day? Do you think Heathrow's procedures worked? Thousands of people around the planet are saying, I don't think they worked. And how can it be that the entire country was grounded like COVID lockdowns by a generator failing? It's an astonishing state of affairs. Now let's get to Michelle Dewberry. Jubes & Co. is up next. Here is the queen of primetime debate.
Thank you, Martin. Well, I can tell you now, if that's the CEO's definition of things working, quite frankly, I, for one, would hate to see what his definition of things not working looks like. I will ask about that on my show tonight. Have we got things, the priorities right in this country when it comes to resilience and all the rest of it? But also, in addition to that, I also want to look at this banner. Is this racist? Keep work, foreign ideologies out, defend Europe. Because apparently that has been determined to be either racist and or discriminatory, and the football fans that held that banner up will be shortly, if they're found, facing, I quote, consequences. I really want to look at that because it strikes me as odd for a whole host of reasons. Of course, it's Friday. Dewberry Tavern is also open. I'll share a drink with you as well. So stay tuned to GB News. Grab yourself a cuppa if you like, and I will see you in just a couple of minutes.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello again and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. Fine for many of us today, but cloudier, breezier, cooler compared with recent days, and that's because gradually we're going to see rain spread east overnight. The rain already affecting parts of the southwest and west of the UK because of this area of low pressure moving in. But elsewhere, we've got breezy and cloudy weather to end the day on Friday. Still some clear spells for Scotland, northern and eastern England. Nevertheless, it is going to turn increasingly unsettled overnight with spells of rain or showers spreading north and east across the country. Still some drier interludes, but with the cloud, with the breeze, it is going to be a mild start to the weekend with temperatures of 10 or 11 Celsius first thing Saturday. There'll also be some brightness to begin things across Wales, western England, but a lot of cloud through Scotland and some heavy outbreaks of rain moving north. Certainly an unsettled feel to things compared with recent mornings. Northern Ireland also seeing spells of rain or showers. The wettest weather will be in the west. But across England and Wales, things are very mixed. We're going to see a mixture of cloudy spells, some sunshine coming through, but also rain moving north, whilst showers begin to emerge elsewhere. And in fact, there could be some heavy downpours developing late morning into the afternoon across parts of England and Wales, particularly through central areas, Wales, the Midlands, East Anglia, but just about anywhere could see one of these slow-moving heavy downpours. They'll be hit and miss though, some sunshine in between, still feeling warm in that sunshine in the south, but considerably cooler across Scotland and Northern Ireland, where we do have those spells of rain lingering. Saturday night then sees further rain or showers spread slowly northwards across the country, and the focus by Sunday is across eastern parts with some rain or showers. Monday and Tuesday a little quieter, still some showers around, but for many places it will be turning drier.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Throughout my life, music has meant a great deal to me. It has that remarkable ability to bring happy memories, comfort us in times of sadness, and to take us to distant places. But perhaps above all, it can lift our spirits to such a degree, and all the more so when it brings us together in celebration. In other words, it brings us joy. So this is what I particularly wanted to share with you, songs which have brought me joy. This seemed such an interesting and innovative way to celebrate